In this world, there's two kinds of people, my friend. Those with loaded guns and those who dig. Broadcasting from a Montana wilderness fortress at the headwaters of the Missouri, this is Matt Christiansen Live.
Then you can get it.
Go back to where you come from, okay?
Hello and welcome to the show. This is Matt Christiansen Live, a proud duct tape production for Sunday, June 29th, 2025. Thank you for tuning in. And of course, happy 4th of July week. I'm getting an early start on it. Or Happy Canada Day, or whatever it is you celebrate up in the communist north. Sitting shotgun tonight is our friend, Robert, my former Bible study leader. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Speaking of the communist north, you are right about to embark on a journey through the entirety of it, which we'll get to in a moment. But yeah, that's I can't wait to hear about this when you get back. But I'll save the details for just a second. Robert's going to motorcycle to the Arctic Ocean is the headline. So Godspeed. I'm going to say I knew Robert before he got eaten by a bear and or arrowed by Indians. Or what? Like, are they Eskimos up there? Is that what they?
I guess so. But you know what? The real story will be when I die, they will uncover I was far right because I was on your show and I'll get the headpiece instead of you. Prepare yourself.
Yeah, that sounds like the proper timeline. I could see that happening that way. Anyway, in the news tonight, as is tradition for the end of the term in June, the Supreme Court releases a series of gigantic and consequential decisions. Pretty much all of them very good in my estimation. But among the things we'll talk about tonight, nationwide injunctions from district court judges are dead, or effectively dead, severely limited. Birthright citizenship may be next. That decision on nationwide injunctions, that's kind of the footnote there, when in fact that is such a major constitutional issue that's kind of silent throughout the context of that decision. So maybe that'll be decided down the line. Parents, I would say, they didn't get it right. They have their right to opt out of having their kids sit through gay book readings recognized. You do, in fact, have a First Amendment right, apparently, not to have your kid required to sit through gay book readings in elementary school in Maryland. And then Planned Parenthood. It's been rough. It's been rough for a few years for Planned Parenthood, but now they can be banned from state Medicaid programs. So we'll get through all of that. Later in the show, my friend NeoUnrealist will catch me up on some stories he's been following. Have you heard of Alligator Alcatraz in Florida?
I have heard some about it, and I love it.
We're going to get into... I thought they were actually going to do the moat with the alligators. It's natural alligators in their natural swamp environment. But this is a repurposed airport in the Everglades, and they're going to use it as a deportation facility, effectively. And the alligators they're there to do their part. Pythons, too, apparently. Tren de Aragua continues terrorizing apartment buildings in Aurora. No, they haven't cleaned that up yet, at least fully. And Karmelo Anthony, of course, the guy who stabbed Austin Metcalf at the track meet in April, he and his family, they say they're broke and they need a public defender or they need lawyerly help, even though they raised like $600,000 on GoFundMe. So everyone's wondering, how is that not enough to hire a lawyer? We'll get into that a little bit. And when Robert and I come back, of course, I have some hoax hate before we get out of here. Were you on last time we talked about the Jonathan Joss story? Did I talk about that with you? The King of the Hill guy and the bizarre relationship?
Yes,
you
yes.
were on.
Mm-hmm.
We're finally hearing a little bit of the other side of that story, at least from the lawyer representing that guy. So an update there. We'll catch up with your super chats as well. Hey, if you enjoy the show, please consider supporting the show. You can do that one time or recurring for as little as $1 a month over on my website, mattchristiansenmedia.com/support. Support for the show not only helps me sustain, but it pays the people who make this show possible as well. And there are perks available for your support too. Or you can check out the merch store. Lots of awesome new graphic designs for t-shirts and mugs and more. Likewise, merch sales help not only my operation, but they support the designers who made these designs, all of whom are listeners of this stream. mattchristiansenmedia.com/shop. Find both of those links right there on the homepage, mattchristiansenmedia.com or mattis.gay, if you can't spell my confusing name. No, contrary to some speculation, I'm not on drugs or anything, so when I'm rubbing my eyes or rubbing my nose tonight, it's because I have devastating seasonal allergies. Whatever is blooming right now, I have not busted into Hunter Biden's stash or anything like that. I just, whatever it is killing me. So anyway, that's what's going on if I look like... I may have some drug-induced symptoms. Got to say hello to our featured listener-owned business for the evening. That's our friends at Hope Innovations. Hey, have you ever wanted to grow your own garden, but you didn't feel like you had the space or maybe the skills? With food prices rising and chemicals being added to our food every day, you might consider adding a hydroponic garden system to your home. Grow clean and fresh produce all year round with the Eden Tower from Hope Innovations. When it comes to growing your own food, invest in the best system out there and discover the joy of regularly having freshly harvested salads, homegrown herbs, tomatoes, peppers, and more with your very own hydroponic system engineered to be elegant and practical. The Eden Tower stands above the competition with its patented cup system that allows you to just drop a seed and go. You don't need a green thumb to easily grow delicious and nutritious food at home. Business has been so good over at Hope Innovations that they've been sold out of these kits until July. But very soon here, they should be good to go again. You can still get an order in for delivery in July, 50% down, 50% due at shipping very soon. And you still get that awesome $200 listener discount. That's right, listeners of this show get $200 off an Eden Tower hydroponics kit from Hope Innovations through a listener-exclusive link available only on my website. Head on over to mattchristiansenmedia.com/deals. Find that Hope Innovations section. Click the link for $200 off an Eden Tower hydroponics kit. Get started growing your own food easily and simply today, or very soon in July here, but sooner rather than later. Of course, find all the information at mattchristiansenmedia.com/deals. Deals by listeners for listeners, and you can still pick up some of that special new cologne from Hero Soap Company in my signature scents, Timberline and Old West. Timberline, of course, is that frosty pine experience where the forest meets the peaks. Old West is the scent of oak barrels and leather, ready to bust open the saloon doors. You can get these new signature colognes or bar soap, liquid soap, shampoo, conditioner, and more, all of it 10% off using promo code MCListener at herosoapcompany.com. Promo code MCListener for 10% off at herosoapcompany.com. All right, a couple pieces of housekeeping, Robert. There will be no stream on Wednesday, this coming Wednesday, July 2nd. I'm taking a little bit of time off for Independence Day. And, of course, my friend Frank is usually here for the first Wednesday stream of the month. Frank is going to join on July 9th, so we'll just delay on a week, and he'll be back. I've mentioned on this show before that I don't like when shows I listen to just disappear people and you never hear from them again and you wonder what happened to them. Lately, I've had a few emails or messages wondering if I did that to Batman I'm sure you know Batman. And when Robert disappears because he got eaten by a bear, I'm sure I'll get some emails and messages too. But no, I did not disappear Batman. Batman has a personal matter that he's tending to, and that may sound ominous or negative. It's actually very good for his family. He just needs some time to get his affairs in order, and he will be back soon. In fact, I think very soon. So no, Batman was not disappeared. Batman was not secretly fired. Batman's coming back. He just needs a little bit of time. And when he's ready to come back, I'll allow him to describe where he's been for the last month or so, because the last time he was on was at the end of May when we reviewed Rust. So he should be back sometime soon. And Robert, before we get into it, I want to save the details for later in the show. We can talk about this in the full information of what you're doing, but headline level, can you explain to the audience where you're going? You're leaving what, Thursday? Is that the plan?
Yeah, the plan is to leave Thursday from Arkansas and ride my motorcycle all the way up to the Arctic Ocean. That's not the exact route I will take just because I've made modifications since then, but it should take about 10 days getting there, 10 days coming back, camping and all that stuff. And so I'm a little bit nervous. I'm going by myself, but it should be a lot of fun.
We'll get into the full details of what this trip involves at the end of the stream. For now, if you don't make it to the end of the stream and you'd like to follow Robert on this journey, which, as I understand, is going to be pretty much the entirety of July you're doing this, you can follow him and his journey at motorcyclerobert.com. He's got a Substack there where you'll, I assume where you can, you'll post updates, but there's probably not a lot of opportunity to post updates. Can you carrier pigeon from the middle of nowhere in the Yukon territory and have it updated that way? What do you do?
We will see. We will see. But I do intend to post, but I can't make any promises.
All right. Well, at the very least, we'll get the story when you get back, if you do indeed get back. But we'll cross that bridge when we get there. On the Wednesday show with Joshi, we talked about the report that Big Balls, the 19-year-old kid who was, of course, a viral Doge employee, no longer a government employee, as was reported early in the week. I even gave him the traditional "I will remember you" Sarah McLachlan send-off. And it turns out that information was at least somewhat, if not entirely, incorrect.
You are fake news.
Very fake news.
At least the claim that Big Balls is no longer a federal government employee is not correct. But I guess that's what I get for trusting Wired reporting. But I'm going to do it again. I'm going to trust Wired reporting right now for the update in the story. Because Wired is saying, oh, he's back. You guys reported that he was gone, and that was wrong. He's not actually gone. He just changed jobs in the federal government. He's not with Doge anymore. Now he went over to the Social Security Administration. He was spotted at their headquarters in Maryland this week. And there are sources speaking with Wired that confirm that he's working at the Social Security Administration now. So he never really left. He just switched roles. But of course, they're not going to retract their report. They're saying, oh, as quickly as he left, he's returned. He never left. He's still with the same company, so to speak, doing the same job, really. But Big Balls will continue, and I suppose now perhaps solely focused on what is certainly one of the larger pieces of the federal budget, that being Social Security, rather. And I assume trying to find waste, fraud, and abuse in that giant pile of money. So we'll see what he's able to do there. But
I'm glad to know that the government still has Big Balls, although. Are we supposed to be scandalized by this? Like, I'm asking genuinely, like, when they report this, are we supposed to be like, oh no, the kid wasn't fired?
I think, I don't know how they intend for us to interpret it. Like, the national nightmare is over, good? Or why was he allowed to? That was my question. Did he get a retirement package at age 19 after 3 months of government employment or something like that? Yeah, I don't know how they intended it to be understood, but Wired, I believe Wired, they're the people that broke the story that there was indeed a 19-year-old nicknamed Big Balls known to have registered web domains including Tesla.sexy and other controversial titles. So Wired has really been, as far as Big Balls reporting goes, Wired has been at the forefront. So congratulations to them. But hey, speaking of massive government spending, fraud, waste, and abuse, another gigantic federal spending bill is nearing its end. possibly nearing passage, possibly nearing a presidential signature. Of course, this being Trump's so-called big, beautiful bill. We got tax cut extensions in there. We got tax breaks on tips and overtime. There's a crackdown on Medicaid to eliminate fraud and install some work requirements. There's a little bit of money for border enforcement, but it's in the broad context of continuing Biden-era spending levels, as we've discussed previously. The old record just becomes the new norm, and that's what we're looking at here. But recall the House passed this bill by one vote a few weeks ago. Last night, it cleared its first hurdle in the Senate to move into debate and then a final vote, again by a very thin margin. The vote in the Senate last night, procedurally, this is not a final passage, but to move it into debate, 51-49. Rand Paul predictably opposed the bill. He doesn't like the continued massive spending. Tom Tillis of North Carolina, maybe somewhat of a surprise vote of opposition. He thinks that Medicaid cuts or Medicaid limitations, Medicaid reform, however you may want to characterize it, that's a threat to Medicaid funding in his state. And Trump was saying, I'm going to primary that guy, and Rand Paul too. And then Tom Tillis announced today, joke's on you, I'm not running for re-election. So, okay. All right. Doesn't really matter, assuming these votes hold the same in a final passage, but who knows? Just because you vote to advance it to debate doesn't mean you vote to pass the bill. So there's a long way to go procedurally. And you also had Ron Johnson, who was a holdout. He switched his vote at the last second for unclear reasons, but they thought they were going to need J.D. Vance to walk in there and break the tie, because had Ron Johnson voted no, it would have been 50-50. J.D. Vance would have broken the tie. Again, not a final vote on the bill, just procedural, moving it into debate. And so what's going to happen now? Democrats and Republicans are going to have 10 hours each to debate the bill, though Republicans are not expected to use much, if any, of that time. Then there's an amendment process, and of course, whatever changes are made to the bill in the amendments or in the Senate, they have to be reconciled with the House before it's sent to Trump. There's a lot of stuff to happen still. But the debate, at least last night and into today, couldn't even begin until the 1,000-page bill was read out loud on the Senate floor in full. This was a procedural move forced by Chuck Schumer to delay the process. So here is Chuck forcing the reading last night.
I'm going to force this chamber to read it from start to finish. I object.
Objections heard. The clerk will read the amendment.
Strike all after the enacting clause and insert the following. Section 1, short title. This act may be cited as the one big, beautiful bill.
So like a Wired article, I didn't know how to interpret that. Is that based Chuck Schumer? Am I supposed to be mad that they're forced to read their own bills?
100%. For once, I can support a Democrat.
Now, the other side is anybody actually there listening to the reading of this bill? No, of course not. Are they going to read it? Are they going to listen to it word for word? Hell no. And so the process was going on last night. Earlier today, as far as I understand, it really is too bad Democrats weren't there to hear these words, because at one point they were reading out loud the bill's definition of a woman.
Purposes of paragraph 3, the term female means an individual who naturally has, had, will have, or would have, but for a developmental or genetic anomaly or historical accident, the reproductive system that at some point produces, transports, and utilizes eggs for fertilization.
So if only Ketanji had been there, she could have learned a lesson.
I wonder why they went with that instead of a chromosomal definition.
Yeah, well, I guess if you want to take the technical exception route that this is often tried to, well, what about people who don't have this? What about people who can't do that? Is there a such thing as a woman who does not produce eggs? I'm guessing no, because aren't women born with their lifetime supply?
Yeah, but I have no idea. I have zero idea. But I imagine maybe there might be some kind of birth defect or whatever. But the chromosomes, it seems to me to be like, you can't be a woman unless you have the right chromosomes. But what do I know?
Yeah. It's closer it's closer than we've seen in various congressional settings in recent years. So I'll take it. Yeah,
it's a win.
As far as the process remaining, it sounds like I don't know where they are. I didn't look in the last couple hours. It was read the whole bill last night and into today. There's going to be debate maybe today into tomorrow. But you're going to have debate and amendments going in early into this week, and then presumably it'll go to the House and maybe on to Trump if these votes hold. There's one thing about it that really grinds my gears, though, and that's what they did to gun rights. And I actually, when I say they, I thought it was spineless Republican senators. No, it's actually the parliamentarian. And this raises some interesting questions about the role of the parliamentarian in the Senate. So without getting too deep into the weeds for all the people who don't give a crap about guns, there was language in this bill that would have deregulated suppressors, short-barreled rifles, other firearms and firearm accessories that currently require you to go through an expanded background check system with the federal government and pay a $200 tax stamp to have. And this bill would have said, we're not doing that anymore with respect to these specific types of guns, which to people who enjoy exercising their gun rights is awesome. But then, as you see in the NRA post here on Friday, it was announced, no, the gun stuff has been stripped out of the bill. Like I said, I thought that was just them being bitches about it. By them, I mean, people who are elected to Congress to support gun rights and then don't. No, it's the parliamentarian. The parliamentarian is the officer in the Senate who's in charge of advising the Senate on the rules of procedure, including parliamentary procedure and whatever other rules they have to follow. So the parliamentarian, this woman's name is Elizabeth McDonough. She says that this part of the bill cannot be included in the bill because it violates the Byrd Rule. Now, the Byrd Rule is what governs what can and cannot be passed through this reconciliation process. Strictly speaking, to pass bills through the Senate while getting around the filibuster process, as in simple majority rather than 60 votes to advance, it has to have some sort of budgetary or financial impact. And it can't, the budgetary or financial impact can't just be incidental to the substance of the bill or the provision. She's saying that's what this is, that this is really a gun thing, and the tax stamp stuff is not a budgetary issue. It's, I guess, at its core. And so it has to be stripped from the bill. And at least as it stands now, Republicans are going along with this. Now, from a layman outsider perspective, I don't understand how you can say this is not a budgetary matter. To have these guns and accessories, you have to have a tax stamp. The tax stamp is proof that I paid the tax to have this device. And she's saying, no, it really has nothing to do with budget. It has nothing to do with revenues or increasing or decreasing. Yes, it does. But now Republicans are scrambling. The NRA says maybe they'll introduce some sort of amendment where they maintain the background check stuff that you have to do and the fingerprints and the process, which is still a problem, but they'll drop the tax to $0. So the parliamentarian has no basis to say this isn't revenue related, because that's all they're changing is the dollar amount that you pay, even if you're not paying anything, to get this tax stamp. But I was reading, I'm like, I haven't researched the parliamentarian very much. I'm thinking, who cares what this lady thinks? What constitutional authority does she have? There have only been 8 of them in the history of the country because they're not constitutionally required or defined. We just put these people in there as a term of Senate rules, and she's been in there since 2012, since Harry Reid appointed her. Now, so do we have to listen to her? No. Can the Senate Majority Leader fire her at will? He can. In fact, it happened in 2001. Trent Lott fired former parliamentarian Robert Dove. My understanding is for disagreements about kind of the same thing. I think it was Byrd Rule interpretation. So we don't even have to make this grand show of it and fire her. You can just J.D. Vance or what's his face, the new majority leader, Thune from South Dakota. Just tell her to shut up.
Shut up, bitch!
And what's she gonna do? Who cares? I know that the Senate likes to have this as a matter of decorum or as a matter of, I guess, their own internal process, but in no way is this constitutionally prescribed or required. So I don't really understand why we care what this lady thinks.
Agreed. Besides, remember when Obamacare was upheld with Supreme Court because it was a tax? And mind you, the penalties for Obamacare have been reduced to 0. So Obamacare, which is still the law of the land, has effectively no budgetary effect because the penalty is 0, and it's been for many years. But it is only constitutional because it's a tax. And so
you're not, as opposed to a fine was the distinction?
No, as opposed to Because Congress does not have the power to regulate healthcare, right?
Yeah.
But they have the power to make tax laws. So, like, Obamacare hinges on the idea that it's a tax.
Okay.
Although it completely revolutionized how we do health insurance in this country.
Yeah.
So an area that the feds have no jurisdiction over. And what I'm saying is, if that massive legislation could be deemed a tax because it had some penalty component, why would this not be a tax? This is absolutely ridiculous.
It's 100% a tax. It is a tax stamp. I have to pay the tax to legally possess this particular gun configuration or gun accessory. Anyway, I know that people get mad when I talk too much about guns. So I'll leave. The principle here is, who cares what this lady thinks? For some reason, we allowed the entire Senate to be dictated by this lady who has no constitutional basis whatsoever. Anyway, we'll see if Republicans grow a spine on that this week or not.
This is why some people would oppose women in government.
Oh, speaking of, let's talk about the catfight in government. Man, I know that people think Supreme Court decisions and sometimes their eyes glaze over, or they think that's some of the most boring material I could possibly read or consume. Most of the time, you might be right, even if you care about the constitutional principles and you care about how our country is legally organized. It's a lot of dry material, for sure. Hundreds of pages of dry material. But this catfight between Amy Coney Barrett and Jumanji Brown Jackson, some of the best Supreme Court reading I've enjoyed in a long time, for the wrong reasons. I think that this indicates not only a rift on the court, which may be quite serious, but in the case of Brown Jackson's opinion, I guess like a proud girl boss argument that history and law are just minutia and technicalities that we don't actually have to pay attention to. If the country went the direction of her opinion, and some would argue we have, it's just with, better phrasing. I think that's probably true. But man, this is, I know you have a lot to say about it too, but before I get into the details, do you have anything up top about this, the nationwide injunction / birthright citizenship decision? And I want to preface my request with the punctuation. That's not prefacing, I guess. I want to punctuate it with full stop, like Jumanji Brown Jackson. Full stop. Do you have any headline level opinions?
Just the headline level, I would say the issues discussed here are complicated, but if the country operated the way that Justice Jackson is describing in her dissent, this would be a radically different country. Like, what she's suggesting is entirely changing our form of government. Like, that is the proper framing of this. In fact, that's why nobody joined her, because it is insane.
Even Kagan, Sotomayor, that's the thing. I'll get into it in a moment, but when Barrett is ripping her apart and saying, like, listen, bitch, even Sotomayor had the sense to stay within the general framework and confines of the law. You're just like TikTok girl bossing over here, and nobody even knows what you're talking about. Hilarious. Okay. So, we're going to get into these decisions in sequence. As I mentioned, there are several that are consequential, but probably the most consequential is this one on nationwide injunctions and birthright citizenship. And it's massive in what it means for both lawsuits against the president and, I suppose, the federal government overall, to the extent other, I guess, branches may be sued. I don't know. But also what it may mean down the line for birthright citizenship is massive. So I'm going to go through birthright citizenship here just a little bit to give you the context in which this fits, even though it's not technically the substance of this decision. But back in February, Trump issues this executive order on birthright citizenship. Birthright citizenship is the concept, the current understanding of the 14th Amendment that we have that says, hey, if you're born here, no matter who your parents are, two illegals come here and have a baby, you're a citizen by virtue of being born on U.S. soil. Now, Trump issued an executive order in February saying, no, that's not right. If you're born here to two illegals, or even people who don't necessarily have legal residence, I forget exactly what the technicals were here. Robert, you probably know. But in general, it was limiting the scope of who's actually a citizen when they're born here. And so without getting into the technicals of what the 14th Amendment may or may not have meant, to give you a summary of my opinion, and I think what I think is the correct understanding of the 14th Amendment, obviously, the 14th Amendment obviously does not say anybody born here is a citizen. The language has additional detail. It says all persons born here and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens. So what does that mean? Born here, we understand. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof has to mean more than mere presence here. Otherwise, you're saying people who are born here and also are present here. How are you born here if you're not present here? It doesn't make any sense. Subject to the jurisdiction thereof must mean something. That's maybe what the court will consider later. But of course, Trump is restricting that and saying, no, just because you came here with two illegal parents and you're born here doesn't mean you're a U.S. citizen. So, of course, a bunch of organizations and individuals sued to stop that, to stop his enforcement of what would be a change in how birthright citizenship is understood by the federal government. And then you had several district court judges, and as in the lowest courts or the lowest judges in the federal system, issuing these injunctions to stop its enforcement. And these injunctions were nationwide. So the executive order, it's not just that the executive order can't be enforced against these particular individuals suing, or maybe within the district that this judge is a part of. Anywhere. Like, I'm a judge who's dealing with some illegals in Northern California. I'm issuing a blockage on the enforcement of this policy for people in Georgia who really have nothing to do with this case other than the facts sort of tangentially connect them to it. And of course, we've seen this practice of nationwide injunctions happening all throughout various Trump policies in the second Trump term. To be fair, it happened under Biden, too. Since we've made this happen, it's just once people go judge shopping for someone who's friendly in the district courts and get a guy to issue a nationwide injunction and undo presidential policy that way. So that's how this has played out. And the other distinction about these district court nationwide injunctions, at every other level of the federal court system, you go to the appeals courts, of course, you go to the Supreme Court, you're getting a group of judges making a decision. At the appellate level, you're going to have a panel of judges. At the Supreme Court, you're going to have the 9-member Supreme Court. These district court judges, in this practice of nationwide injunctions, they're making nationwide policy at their own sole discretion. It's just a guy. When you're talking to, even if you think the Supreme Court has too much power, and in many ways I think they do, at least the power of any individual justice is limited by the fact that there are 8 others that they have to work with and convince and argue with. These district court judges is just a guy sitting in a particular a lot of times it's not even a state. It's a small part of a state making nationwide policy. So these birthright citizenship cases, they were consolidated. Trump appealed them to the Supreme Court on this nationwide injunction question. And that's what the Supreme Court actually considered, because that's what Trump asked them to. So if you have any frustration that this case didn't really get to the birthright citizenship question, which is a frustration I share, because I think that whole thing is incorrect for a bunch of reasons that I could get into, but I won't. That's not the Supreme Court's fault. It's the question that Trump asked them to consider was nationwide injunctions, not the substance of birthright citizenship. So the Supreme Court left that alone in this case, and they considered only the question of whether district court judges issuing nationwide injunctions, whether that practice is consistent with the Constitution, the Judiciary Act of 1789, which establishes the federal court system, and the broader history of how courts traditionally operated in the English system at the time of the American founding. So what the constitutional framers understood and intended with how courts operated. And the decision went 6-3 to stop the practice of nationwide injunctions, generally speaking. Although I'm a little bit confused on the holding here, Robert. But there's a lot of meat here. I understand this to mean you just can't do that anymore. But was there any green light to district court judges issuing nationwide injunctions at all?
No, for the most part. Yeah, what you're saying is correct. For the most part, they said, don't do this anymore. They leave the door open for some wild exceptions, maybe something really drastic. But for the most part, there should be no more of these.
Okay. Well, it went along the lines you'd expect ideologically, 6-3. Amy Coney Barrett wrote the majority opinion. Her reasoning is pretty simple. There's no constitutional basis for this type of action, as in nationwide injunctions from district court judges. There's no basis in the Judiciary Act, which establishes the courts. And it's not really consistent with historical practice at the time of the founding. So no, district court judges should not have the power to block executive policy nationwide on a whim. The very concept of a district court judge implies limited jurisdiction. The judge is limited to a particular area, the district in which they operate. And in general, courts are to provide relief or remedies to litigants, people who brought a lawsuit. And sometimes there can be class action lawsuits representing a massive group of people. But generally speaking, it's not everybody. But that's the way that this operates. And if district courts were not supposed to be limited in their scope and their reach, I think it's fair to question, why do we have a district court system at all? Why don't we just have hundreds of judges who are just national judges? The only argument I can think of, maybe it's just geographical convenience at a time where that was more important, like way back when, if you needed a federal judge in California, it's pretty hard to get on your wagon and go to D.C. to find one if that's the way it operated. But I think the system is designed, given our entire framework of decentralized power through states, with the idea and the intent that district court judges are to oversee their districts, not boss around people on the other side of the country. Anyway, Barrett has a line summarizing the holding in this case. When a court concludes that the executive branch has acted unlawfully, the answer is not for the court to exceed its power to. Very simple. And that means that where Trump or any president is challenged, a district court judge is limited to litigants or to the district. Of course, it doesn't mean that the people bringing the lawsuit can't appeal and get national resolution on this. You can still go through the appeals court system. You can still go to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court itself still has power to clarify whether a national policy or a national law, federal law, is constitutional or not. But that's all the technical backstory. The minutia, the legalese, the smokescreen, as Ketanji Brown Jackson calls it. The catfight that developed here is where this gets perhaps more entertaining. So Sonia Sotomayor writes the dissenting opinion, and she read it from the bench, just like Chuck Schumer. She wanted to do the performance of reading it from the bench, and I don't know if anybody showed up to hear her read it, but she did do that. And she says that with this without this nationwide injunction power, constitutional guarantees will, quote, be meaningful in name only for the individuals who are not parties to a lawsuit, which I don't think is true. The Supreme Court can still block unconstitutional policy and practice. It's just not up to district court judges to set those terms nationally anymore. Anyway, where it gets really interesting is Jumanji Brown Jackson's dissent. And this is where it gets completely delusional. She says that limiting the reach of a district court judge or district court judges is an existential threat to the rule of law. I think she is an expert on existential threats to the rule of law, being one herself, though, so she may know a thing or two. But as we were talking about, she argues this case in the language of a teenager, I think. And it's not just the language, because I don't want to be the language police. It's the fact that you're mocking the very details that define the basis of your job. Like this, for her to mock legal technicalities is the equivalent of a doctor mocking all the specific aspects of your disease or health condition that matter quite a lot in treating it. Maybe to a person who speaks about this colloquially, it doesn't, but to a doctor, it should, and they should know about all those technicals.
And the thing is, it reveals her judicial philosophy, because in her mind then, what the law is does not matter. What matters is what she believes the law should be. Yeah. So that's why the details don't matter, because who cares? I want the law to be this now, and so it is. Full stop.
And I believe this is the full time the phrase full stop has been used in a Supreme Court opinion. She used it twice. I had to check. Did she do this twice? Yes. First piece of writing from Ketanji Brown Jackson. I view the demise of the notion that a federal judge can order the executive to adhere to the Constitution, full stop, as a sad day for America. And then the second instance of full stop. Courts must have the power to order everyone, including the executive, to follow the law, full stop. To conclude otherwise is to endorse the creation of a zone of lawlessness within which the executive has the prerogative to take or leave the law as it wishes, and where individuals who would otherwise be entitled to the law's protection become subject to the executive's whims instead. Okay, even under this holding, as I said, district court judges do have the power to issue orders against the president. They just don't have the power to bring the whole country under those orders or apply them to everybody. They can still apply them to the enforcement of the people who brought the lawsuit, or maybe even to everyone within their particular district, as far as I understand. And then those people who have a problem with this policy or this law, they can still bring the challenge through the appellate court system and to the Supreme Court. In no way does this stop the courts in general from judicial review, from their role constitutionally as we've understood it, though I understand many have questions about judicial review overall. But this does not implicate the entirety of judicial review within the federal court system, but she's acting like it does. I also think this is the first time, as you were mentioning earlier, the first time the phrase "wait for it" in combination with pause ellipses, I think, has been used in a Supreme Court decision. Like this is some kind of performance bit. Wait for it, dramatic pause. Okay.
She needs to be impeached immediately for this.
Just for that sentence.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. She writes, as I understand the concern, in this clash over the respective powers of two coordinate branches of the government, the majority sees a power grab, the majority on the court, the other justices, but not by a presumably lawless executive choosing to act in a matter that flouts the plain text of the Constitution. Instead, to the majority, the power-hungry actors are, wait for it, tick-tock, 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 the district courts.
Bingo.
Unironically, yes, though. This is what makes this so stupid, is the performance bit acts like she's making a point. No, the power-hungry people, the people in the wrong in terms of pursuit of power constitutionally, are the district court judges. The district courts only have the power constitutionally assigned to them by Congress. When they exceed it, yes, they are power-hungry. So Congress never gave these district court judges this nationwide injunction power. There's nothing in history to suggest that was Congress's intent. So if they claim that power that was never assigned to them or ever intended, yes, they're power hungry. Yes. What point are you making here? But you know what that is, Robert? That's all that law, all that history. That's technical minutia. That's smokescreen. That's legalese.
That's the second cause for impeachment. I don't know if you're about to show that sentence, but it hurts.
Are you talking about this one, the minutia sentence, or the smokescreen sentence?
The one where she starts with it. It's like all the legalese and whatever. But sorry, go ahead. Show this one.
I lament that the majority is so caught up in minutia of the government's self-serving, finger-pointing arguments that it misses the plot. No, the minutia is the plot. The law and the history on which the law was built, those are the determining factors in deciding this case. That's not minutia, that's the substance. But the legalese is a smokescreen. It obscures a far more basic question of enormous legal and practical significance. May a federal court in the United States of America order the executive to follow the law? Again, it's not smokescreen legalese. It is what decides this case. May a federal court order the executive to follow the law? Yes, within the confines of the Constitution and the law. Yes, that's what the majority said. Do you even understand the majority opinion? You're arguing against something they're not saying. District court judges have no authority to do that to cover everybody nationwide, but that doesn't mean the entirety of judicial review is erased and the courts no longer serve a purpose. She writes this rhetorically. It sounds like so self-satisfied, like she's making a point, but the point is wrong. Like even if I've read a lot of Supreme Court opinions that I disagree with, as I'm sure you've probably read way more. This strikes me as one of the accusing others of missing the plot. Like not only are you wrong, you appear to be very stupid. Like you don't even understand the other side.
Yeah, and like I said, what she argues is wild. So let me give kind of a little bit of legal context to what's going on here. This whole case, right, it's just about universal injunctions. The immediate case does not touch the citizenship issue, although it does get discussed fairly, extensively by the dissents. But at any rate, the injunctive relief is part of a relief in equity. And this is going to get a little bit technical, and the technicalities don't matter.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm glad you're explaining this because equity is such a loaded word now. And I don't actually know exactly what they mean in this specific legal context. So when they use that phrase, what do they mean?
Okay, so back in the day, English courts, there were two kinds of courts. There were actually like physically different courthouses, that you would go to, different judges, and you had remedies in law. And that a remedy in law is pretty much, generally it is money or some other remedy that the law explicitly sets out. Okay, so let's say that we have a conflict, the two of us, a civil conflict. Here's a typical example. You're going to sell your house. We've signed a contract. I'm going to buy it. And then you back out. Okay. Although there's a binding contract, the whole deal, you go, nope, I'm not selling you my house anymore. A remedy in law would be to say, well, I need to be compensated for that some amount. And let's not get into the details of how we would value that. Okay. But courts in equity can come up with more creative remedies that can address a situation better, particularly when there is no appropriate remedy in law. So, for example, the courts have always treated real estate to be unique. So, like, they would say no amount of money can really make it right. Like, I am entitled to buy your house specifically. Mm-hmm. It is. So the remedy in equity is to force you to go through with the contract. That's called specific performance. So the court will say, Matt, you have to sell your house to Robert.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, because remedies in equity involve more than just a party paying money, they can even compel behavior. Like in my example, remedies in equity are unusual and they require a higher burden of evidence, or you have to check more boxes. I should say it like that. Okay. Well, in modern law, now most courts, although not all, have merged the two. The same court can provide remedies in law and in equity. But again, we still recognize that an equitable remedy is going to require you to check more boxes because it is unusual. It can be much more coercive, right? We all understand that compelling behavior is much more coercive by the courts than just making you pay money. Well, injunctions is compelled behavior. It is telling you need to stop doing whatever the behavior may be, right? Think of a temporary restraining order, whatever the case. Well, and so the question in this case is, what are the equitable remedies that a federal court has available? And to answer that question, the majority goes back in history and goes, hey, historically, these were the remedies available to a court. And these universal injunctions go well beyond that. And of course, I'm skipping over some of the details and this, that, and the other. Now, here's what is so shocking about Jackson's dissent. Let's compare it actually to the other dissent, to Sotomayor's. Sotomayor has a very reasonable dissent. In fact, I find it to be very powerful. She goes, this idea of universal injunction does have an antecedent in Old British law. This is actually not all that unusual. Now, whether you believe her or not, at least she's arguing within the ballpark, if you will.
She grants the relevance of the history in making that argument. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's exactly right. So she grants the framework, if you will. She's just disagreeing about the history. Yeah. Okay. Very reasonable. Cool. Jackson, however, she speaks broadly, and I even highlighted all sorts of quotations where she's saying a court can grant remedies that go beyond just the parties at stake, just broadly. Like, she does not put any kind of limiting principle. And this is why this is so wild. The courts always, British law, now in the US, courts only adjudicate cases and controversies, meaning the court is focused on the parties at hand. And sometimes in equitable remedies, they may go a little bit beyond the parties that are in front of them. But Jackson is saying, no. Like, courts just have to, they can affect any parties broadly to make them follow the law, which let me put it outside of a constitutional setting for a second, and
Put it in
I'll
full stop language for me so I can understand. Yeah.
Let me be sassy over here and try to quote Jackson. And sorry, I'm going so long on this, but this example will really, I feel like, bring it home. Let's say, again, let's put it in a civil context that will be very familiar. Let's say that I worked for you, Matt, and that somebody else worked for you, Batman, let's say. Mm-hmm. And you sexually harassed both of us.
Okay. If you believe the super chat, that's likely. Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking. There's plenty of evidence in those super chats. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I take you to court, and let's say that I prove my case. And so the court says, okay, Matt, you have to pay Robert $1 million. Under the philosophy of Jackson, there's nothing that stops the court from saying, Matt, you also have to pay $1 million to Batman. And you would say, but that's a different lawsuit. Or, I mean, there's actually no lawsuit. Like Batman
didn't bring the suit, but you sued on your own behalf, but he's incidentally involved in the facts.
Yeah, he's actually not involved at all. I mean, he's only involved in the sense that he was also sexually harassed, but he's not
trying to sue me. Maybe he decided later he liked it or something.
That's exactly right. Maybe he forgave you. He liked it.
Yeah,
we don't.
Whatever. Yeah.
Under her philosophy, the court should be able to look broadly out there and go, but you know what? We think Matt also broke the law regarding Batman. So we're going to go ahead and assign a remedy, even if no one has requested it, even if no one has represented him.
Yeah.
And this is why the majority, their language is brutal. They go, what she's suggesting, it goes against everything. The way the courts are set up, all of our history, it is wild.
Can you repeat the part of this stuff where you said all about the things?
Thank you for that journey through the technicals and the minutia and the smokescreen. I didn't realize that she went that far in terms of the courts can search for victims themselves, is what you're talking about. Yeah.
And if we're being charitable, I'll say just this very briefly. If we're being charitable, she maybe is only restricting this ability to look broadly by the courts to cases that involve the government. But certainly philosophically, there is not that stop in her quotations. Like if you just read her quotes, they also do not explicitly mention the government. So we could
So it's actually no stop. It wasn't full stop. It's no stop.
No, literally no stop.
Yeah.
Wait for it. No stop.
God, we should be Jumanji clerks. We would write way better than those clowns. Anyway, so you've set up all of this. So this brings us to Amy Coney Barrett lacing up her Nikes to dunk on Jumanji. And of course, these Supreme Court opinions, they get feisty at times. Scalia was notoriously snarky. He would mock the reasoning of his opposition. Even Scalia, you tell me if you disagree with this characterization, even in his mockery and his wit, I think Scalia was kind of playful and good-natured. It seems like Barrett maybe actually hates Ketanji Brown Jackson. Am I off in that, or do you think this is something different? Or do you think something's different? Or am I wrong?
I think Scalia sometimes could be quite brutal, but in such a funny and clever way that it was hard to be mad about it. But no, I think in this case, the court is truly at a loss. Like, what in the world are you talking about?
Well, some of the quotes from Amy Coney Barrett referencing Ketanji Brown Jackson and her dissent, the principal dissent, and by that she means Sotomayor, the opinion you were talking about. Well, that focuses on conventional legal terrain, like the Judiciary Act of 1789 and our cases on equity. Justice Jackson, however, chooses a startling line of attack that is tethered neither to these sources nor, frankly, to any doctrine whatsoever, waving away attention to the limits on judicial power as a mind-numbingly technical query. She offers a vision of the judicial role that would make even the most ardent defender of judicial supremacy blush. In her telling, the fundamental role of courts is to order everyone, including the executive, to follow the law, full stop, end quote. Justice Jackson appears to believe that the reasoning behind any court order demands universal adherence, at least where the executive is concerned. And in her law-declaring vision of the judicial function, a district court's opinion is not just persuasive. It has the legal force of a judgment. And then at the end here, we will not dwell on, even though she kind of did. I mean, she wrote 3+ pages on just how stupid Ketanji Brown Jackson is. But we will not dwell on Justice Jackson's argument, which is at odds with more than 2 centuries worth of precedent, not to mention the Constitution itself. We observe only this. Justice Jackson decries an imperial executive while embracing an imperial judiciary. Maybe that's not quite worthy of Jerry, but as far as Supreme Court opinions go, I think that's about as close to Jerry Springer as you're going to get.
It is. I mean, when they say her argument is grounded on nothing, I mean, it's brutal. But I think she should have written, Justice Jackson's argument is, wait for it, retarded. Full stop.
God, it would have been great. Missed opportunity. But, I mean, she is writing here, to your point, Jackson is not just wrong. She is actually stupid. She's stupid or evil. She might be both. She might be stupid and evil. Even Sotomayor is trying to argue within the framework of the law. Jumanji is she's saying effectively the law itself doesn't matter. Tradition doesn't matter. History doesn't matter. And that raises the question that I mentioned at the top of this discussion. Are the personal divides on the court, of course, philosophical divides can become personal, but for the most part in the history of the courts, like Scalia famously was good friends with Ginsburg and some of his other ideological opponents. Is this just a momentary catfight, 2 mean girls going at each other on the bench, or is this something more meaningful? And I think Jonathan Turley characterizes this correctly, and I think it is important to observe. Chief Justice John Roberts chose Amy Coney Barrett to write this opinion for a reason. And then all 5 of the other non-insane justices signed on. Roberts, Thomas, Alito, Gorsuch, and Kavanaugh. Some of them wrote their own additional opinions. You mentioned it earlier. Kagan didn't, even Sotomayor didn't sign on to Ketanji Brown Jackson. The 6-member majority is all but signing on to the more professional language of fuck that bitch. And so they all implicitly agree with this characterization. Here's Jonathan Turley.
Justice Barrett delivered what was essentially a pile driver, but she didn't do it alone. I mean, her colleagues signed on to this. And I think it's very clear that the majority is getting tired of the histrionics and the hysteria that seems to be growing a bit on the left side of the court.
So thank you, Joe Biden, for your historic contribution to the court, of course.
That was 4 days ago, 5 days ago.
And remember, DEI hire is just sort of like thrown around. It's a slur these days. And sometimes it's made, I guess, on the basis of race or gender or whatever. No, Ketanji Brown Jackson is legitimately, she was hired, she was selected and confirmed because she's a black chick. Joe Biden did the same thing with Kamala Harris. I'm going to pick a black chick. Vote for me. I'm going to pick a black chick to be my vice president. I'm going to nominate a black chick to the Supreme Court, said Joe Biden in January 2022 when Stephen Breyer announced his retirement. And we're supposed to believe this was not some sort of diversity hire, some sort of decision driven by the concept of equity or something. This is just this is our country's foremost black chick. Ketanji Brown Jackson. This is the very, very best. And Joe Biden picked her for that reason.
I think the justices are worried because I think for the most part, for the history of this country, the justices have all stayed within the same framework. They may disagree, like I said, on the facts, on the history, on this, but they're playing by the same rules. And this dissent is extreme in a way that I cannot think of any other court opinion, dissent, concurrence, or whatever that reaches this level. She is suggesting an entirely different form of government and just doing it with a straight face. I mean, I think they realize they either shut this down or this could be disastrous.
I would be interesting to see who eats lunch with whom at the Supreme Court. Where are we going with this? A few questions I have to follow up on this decision. And and when I say questions, I mean specifically for Sotomayor, Kagan, and Jackson and the dissenting team, because there's a few components of their perspective, and I know they don't necessarily all overlap to the extent they all didn't sign on to Jackson. But their general perspective, I think, needs to be clarified. Number one, I wish they could explain to me, because I didn't get this in the dissents, and maybe you picked up on it. I know you read through this too. But what limits, if any, are there on district court judges? If any district court judge says it, it becomes the law of the land, at least until a higher court steps in. Is that the standard? I know that they can be overruled by the appeals court and the Supreme Court, but even Sotomayor, who's more measured, did she have some limitations on nationwide injunctions at all? Or is just, if a guy says it, that's the way it is until some other guy says no?
Yeah.
Okay.
That is very much what they wanted.
And then if that's the case, there's a follow-up question. If we have to have somebody win in the interim while this case goes through the legal process, is it better to have the president win, even if he's pursuing a constitutionally questionable, maybe later determined to be a constitutionally wrong policy or action? Is it better to defer to the president constitutionally, or is it better to defer to a district court judge who's a constitutional officer only insofar as his office was created by Congress, who has oversight over him? I guess what I'm saying is the president constitutionally has nationwide power and is a representative of the people or the states. A district court judge is just a guy who wasn't elected by anybody and happens to represent a particular area. So if we have to pick one, if we have to err on one side of who should get deferral, seems to me the president is the more reasonable response. Even when he's wrong, he'll get overruled by the Supreme Court later, or the appellate court, or whatever.
Yeah, besides, there's another kind of safety to the process, if you will, which is that if the district court cannot impose a universal injunction, then people who are not covered by the injunction, which now would be local, presumably, can sue themselves. So, they try to scare us. I don't know if you caught this in the dissent. They start by saying, well, what if the case was about guns, right? They throw that in, like, if, let's say, the president says guns are now illegal, they're saying, well, now, hey, Republicans, you're not going to be able to get a universal injunction. But that's fine, because I could sue here in Arkansas, and you could go sue in Montana, and the next guy could go sue wherever, and actually we would all be fine. The only thing that wouldn't happen is that just because one guy sued, we're all fine. We all have to do a little bit of work, but that's not the end of the world. In fact, that is how things have worked pretty much for the whole history of the country.
Some
until
might call it the design.
Years.
Yeah. Yeah. We mentioned we've gone over this a bunch, but I want to say it once more just to emphasize the point. Legalese and minutiae, why are they to be dismissed? And I wish Jackson would expand on that point just a little bit more. If a doctor's job is to understand biology and physiology and all the technicals, isn't that supposed to be the job for a lawyer and a judge? But anyway, I want them to clarify, like for Jackson, the rest of, like, you guys talk about the, implicitly king-like power for the president if he's not checked by the courts. You do understand that the majority opinion says this is just for district court judges. There's still an appeals process. The Supreme Court still retains all of its power. They keep acting like he's just an unchecked king and judicial review is not a thing anymore. I would like to hear them clarify their understanding of how the appeals process is going to work under this ruling, because it seems like they don't get it. And then for Elena Kagan specifically, I'm sure you've seen the clip of her in 2022. Have you seen that one? Let me explain. So Elena Kagan, the question is, hey, why did you change your mind? Because Elena Kagan notably didn't write a word in this decision. She signed on to Sotomayor's dissent. That's it. There's nothing wrong with that necessarily. She just didn't write any words of her own. But here's Kagan in 2022 at some sort of event or conference or whatever. And she's saying the practice of district court judges issuing nationwide injunctions, quote, can't be right.
That can't be right. That one district court, whether it's in the Trump years, people used to go to the Northern District of California. And in the Biden years, they go to Texas. And it just can't be right that one district judge can stop a nationwide policy in its tracks and leave it stopped for the years that it takes to go through normal process.
So I'm just messaging my friend and guest, NeoUnrealist, that I might be just a couple minutes late. So I'm making sure I'm not leaving him hanging. But okay, over at Reason Magazine, Eugene Volokh is questioning what Elena Kagan meant by that. Did she mean? That can't be right as a matter of the policy that I would prefer in this country, or did she mean that can't be right as a matter of what the law says? It was sort of unclear in context. Elena Kagan could answer that for us, or maybe she's changed her mind since, which you're allowed to do. But it does sound like as recently as 3 years ago, she was pretty convinced this is not the correct operation for the country. And yet here she is 3 years later, silently signing on to the opposite opinion without explaining why. And for the rest of us, the only variable we can see is my presidential preference changed in the meantime. That's about it.
Absolutely.
So interesting commentary from her. And the biggest question remaining is actually the follow-up question that the court will probably consider themselves. What's going to happen to birthright citizenship? That's why I say this is such a consequential case. It's not just the way judges operate with respect to the president. We have a massive constitutional question to evaluate through this case and the challenges that were brought. So what's going to happen here in terms of the enforcement? Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship is now going to go into effect in 30 days. How is that going to be enforced? What's going to happen practically here? It's kind of unclear, but the odds seem to be, or the prediction seems to be, those who sued to stop him are going to be protected by injunctions covering them. It's possible additional court decisions create injunctions in certain states or certain districts. You're going to get the sort of patchwork of enforcement that you were referencing earlier. It is possible that for some time, somebody born in California is deemed to be a U.S. citizen, even if they're born to illegal immigrant parents. Meanwhile, if they're born over in Florida or Georgia, they're not. And of course, that will have to be resolved. The Supreme Court will take that question on because it must. You're not going to have, for the long term, you're not going to have different citizenship standards according to state or district. And then it's time to see how big of is Big Balls going to go work at the Supreme Court? And by that, I mean, how seriously is this court willing to consider this question? When I say that birthright citizenship was not the intent of the 14th Amendment, I base that on 3 points. And you can tell me if you agree or disagree with these, because I know you're a very legally informed, technical legalese minutia man, full stop. But subject to the jurisdiction thereof has meaning beyond just presence in this country. What does it mean? There was federal law at the time that actually preceded the 14th Amendment, where they were trying to extend rights to those who were enslaved at the time. Trying to get out ahead of this was post-Civil War, pre-14th Amendment. So post-1865, pre-1868. Federal law that preceded the constitutional amendment. And in that law, the phrase was subject to a foreign power. So if we interpret these things to mean the same thing, and there's commentary from senators at the time to that effect, it means if you're here, but you're subject to you're a citizen of a foreign country, you're under the government of a foreign power, your kid that was born here is not automatically a citizen. You are a subject of that foreign power. Number two, the 14th Amendment was written in a specific historical context, very deep in the minutia, of course. Freed slaves, okay? The intent was freed slaves become citizens. Not anybody who shows up yesterday to have a kid becomes a citizen. And then number three, and I consider this to be a very important argument in how the 14th Amendment was intended to be understood, Congress passed the Indian Citizenship Act in 1924. That extended citizenship to all the tribal members, all the Indian tribes. Why did they do that if these Indians were already, or at least most of them, because this was almost 60 years after the passage of, or the ratification of the 14th Amendment, why would Congress have why would they include Indians into U.S. citizenship if they all knew that 60 years prior, well, all those people who were born on Indian reservations and to Indian tribes, they're already citizens by virtue of the 14th Amendment. Why would Congress have bothered if that was already their intent with the 14th Amendment? So does the Supreme Court have the stones to take on these arguments? Because I don't see them leading obviously to the current understanding of the law. I know there's precedent matters. We want to stick with what the status quo is. But this birthright citizenship question is going to get right back up to the Supreme Court as it gets appealed. That patchwork of enforcement is not going to stand. The Supreme Court will have to clarify this issue. If I was a betting man, I'd say they stick with status quo. But this is going to be very interesting to watch, and I invite your thoughts.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the question is murky. There's some precedent on this, but no, the question itself has never been addressed. People act like this is done and settled. That is not the case. And I think that the court will be divided on this. I don't know which way it will go. I could see the conservatives caving. But yeah, it will be very interesting to watch. And I just want to add one quick thing to this whole discussion, because if anybody, is listening to us right now and they go, well, a patchwork kind of solution without universal injunctions, that's so messy and that should not be the case. I just want to point out that has always been the way the US works. And I'm going to give you just one very quick specific example. There are what's called circuit splits, right? Like one federal circuit will decide one thing, another one will decide the opposite. And that difference may stand for years, sometimes decades. And so the same federal law will mean one thing in one place and one thing in another place. Take bankruptcy. In the Fifth Circuit, so let's say in Texas, if you file a tax return late and then you file for bankruptcy, your tax debt will not be discharged. You're going to have to pay back to the government anyways. If you do the exact same thing in Oklahoma, your debt is going to be discharged. So just moving 20 miles, or whatever from one town to the next could make a difference of hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars to you because of how the federal law is applied. Okay, that's just one example of many we could give. And the point is that for now for the justices to say, oh my goodness, a patchwork solution like this is insane, everything will fall apart. It's like, that is literally how we've been operating forever.
Yeah, I agree in the context of citizenship. That doesn't make sense. But if you have to deal with it for a certain period of time until it's resolved, yeah. But I think when the Supreme Court does address the substance of it, there aren't a lot of ways to bitch out because it's going to go one way or the other. Absolutely. John Roberts will try. John Roberts will try to split this baby, and it cannot be split. You're going to have to pick a side, John, and I can't wait to watch it. But anyway, I know I haven't got to Super Chat just yet, and I appreciate you guys. I'm gonna hold Super Chat until the end of the stream, and I know I shouldn't do that.
We love you. You're very special.
But I don't want to make my friend and my guest, NeoUnrealist, wait any longer. So I'm sorry that we went so long on this particular Supreme Court decision. I'm going to get to you guys at the end of the stream. I appreciate you very much. And actually, Robert, we still have 2 more Supreme Court decisions, lots of minutia, lots of legalese to get through. I'll be a lot shorter on those. But we can get into those on the other side of the guest segments. I'll see you back here in, I suppose, about a half hour if you can do that.
Perfect. See you then.
All right. I will be right back.
Stand back and stand by.
Hey, thanks for waiting. Sorry about that.
Hey, Matt, can you hear me?
I can, loud and clear. Let me bump you a little bit. But we're going to get into this. First of all, you got to tell me about Alligator Alcatraz, the latest, some might call it a stunt, but I think this is a pretty practical solution in terms of immigration enforcement. What do you know about Alligator Alcatraz down in Florida?
Well, the first time I heard it, I thought it was a joke. Trump made jokes about putting gators and moats in front of his big, beautiful wall at the southern border. But this thing's going to open on Wednesday, apparently.
Is it, though? Because now they're saying there's legal challenges. So who knows? Maybe the injunctions are too damaged that they won't be able to get it.
Well, here's the thing. If I don't know if you have the video of the local hit on it. There is this local tribe of Indians that basically protest everything that's put there. So this is par for the course. And to the degree that you see protests there, probably almost all of them are the same people that protest every time the state puts something on that airport.
So I do have the news report, but let's back it up just a little bit so that we understand exactly what this is. This is an abandoned airport in the middle of the Everglades that is being
not abandoned.
Not abandoned. Okay.
It's active from like 8:30 in the morning till 5:30, where they'll have people manning the tower and the equipment. If you land there after that, you're on your own, and it's probably a bad idea.
Even that's why the BBC went with virtually abandoned, not abandoned. Okay. So here
you just have to get permission to land there. You call and arrange it. There's a fee.
Okay. Well, here's Governor Ron DeSantis explaining the repurposing of this airport to handle deportations and make those getting deported risk alligator attack if they try to run away.
When you think of the imagery of Alcatraz, Alcatraz is surrounded by a bay. Here in the Everglades, you're actually surrounded by gators and pythons.
So this is as secure as it gets. I mean, if a criminal alien were to escape from here somehow, and I don't think they will, you've got nowhere to go.
Can you hit
what are you going to do? Trudge through the
yeah.
swamp and dodge alligators?
Yeah,
I want to point out these because this is like the big objection in this story. The thing that says Sunbelt behind DeSantis, those white objects, those are all 480 volt, 3-phase commercial air conditioners.
Oh, the inhumanity.
So people are saying that they're just dropping them off on this broiling tarmac in the middle of the Florida summer. No, this is the same thing they do for like first responders and all that. I just want to point out, keep an eye how many of these things there are just for this one tent they're in front of.
It's like every time there's a National Guard deployment, you get some story about how inhumanely they're being treated because they sleep on the floor, and then all the guardsmen tell you that's all we ever do is sleep on the floor. That's pretty much the nature of how it works. But I bet they wish they had these air conditioners sometimes, those guys.
If you pay attention, they're also, at this stage, they're building raised flooring, so they're not even on the tarmac.
Here's the rest of the story with Ron DeSantis.
Gators on the way back to 50, 60 miles just to get to civilization, not going to happen. So not only that is it secure, it also takes this deportation mission out of the hair of our local and state law enforcement. This has no impact on Florida residents because some of that stuff can have an impact on them if it's in more populated areas. And so logistically, this really answers the call. All you need is a little bus to move them, about 2,000 feet that way, then get on a plane and they're gone.
Then I got that report with the overhead shot, if you're ready for that. You want to see that one?
Yeah.
Okay, so
this just shows you the scale.
Yeah, this shows the airport and what they're doing from the sky.
You're looking at the waiting room for illegal immigrants before they take their flight home. Tents scattered across the runway
air conditioning
and heavy
units
machinery
surround it
throughout the abandoned
Yeah, so you can... Whoa, hold on. Did my computer just blow up? Can you still hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry, I lost my display for a second. It's freaking out.
You don't even have to play the entire clip. It's just to show that there's 4 tents essentially that they're planning to house the illegal aliens in. This does not look like a long-term detention facility. It's basically a waiting room lounge where you wait for the next deportation flight to your country of destination.
Yeah, and the nice thing is it's got that runway already built in as an airport, so it's very convenient.
Yeah, that's the other thing. They keep calling this some kind of airstrip, like it's a cartel airstrip in the desert. This is a 10,499 foot runway that they use to train airline pilots to land 747s on.
Well, and that's why for any challenge, you mentioned this is going to start operating on Tuesday or Wednesday. We could have deportations facilitated through this place, making it very difficult for these illegal aliens to escape because they got to deal with the swamp and all the creatures in the swamp. But as I mentioned, there are a couple legal challenges. That's what's difficult to understand about these legal challenges, not that they're anything other than desperation, but they're from environmental groups in federal court trying to say this is some sort of violation of the Endangered Species Act or national environmental policy. There's already an airport. They're not building a new runway. It's already there. And to your point, it actually operates. It's not even defunct or something like that.
I don't want to make it seem like this is some major airport. I mean, it's very lightly used, but they do use it for example, hurricanes, where they have to set up first responders, linemen. The reason that they're able to do this so fast is they're doing the same exact thing they do when they have to house suddenly hundreds, if not thousands, of first responders, and they apparently use this runway for that. Yeah.
Well, in your reading about this story, you think this thing's going to start operating on Tuesday or Wednesday? Is it good to go, or are we going to have a delay?
The thing is, DeSantis, the way he runs Florida, I mean, he's essentially is a bit. You may have problems with him on the national stage, but as a governor, he's been perfect. So I think he's got this in hand. Also, this airport's been there since the 60s, and they've had lawsuits for environmental stuff going back for decades on this, and they always lose.
All right. Well, we'll find out.
Obviously, you were just talking about the judge. Well, one judge can throw a wrench in the works and delay it, but I think ultimately this is going forward.
What do you know about Tren de Aragua continuing to operate in apartment buildings in Aurora? Because, well, I guess I just haven't heard anything for a while. So I figured they probably got that situation under control. Or maybe, as I've been reliably informed, there never was a problem at all. That was all just manufactured. But according to recent reports, Tren de Aragua is still causing havoc in Aurora, Colorado apartment buildings. What's going on?
Well, I think for people that, if they remember the story, the big part of the story wasn't so much that there was a gang in Aurora, Colorado taking over apartments. I mean, that we saw the videos. But what made it blew it up, I think, into a national story was the denials that the people were going, no, you're not, what you're seeing is not what you're seeing.
Yeah.
And that was before the election. I think it's just interesting how after the election, suddenly here's the police chief who was, he wasn't as full-throated as the Democrats in trying to play it down, but he was sort of trying to downplay it before the election. Now it's like, no, we got Tren de Aragua, and they're taking over these buildings.
So the video clip that he showed, and I want to play a little bit of his press conference that you sent to me, but the video is largely the same stuff we saw last summer and into the fall. You got Tren de Aragua members appearing to try to breach certain apartment buildings. They're armed. Presumably they are extorting the tenants of that apartment or trying to get money out of them, whatever is going on, where these Tren de Aragua members take control of these apartment buildings and try to get things of value out of the tenants because they think they're the new landlords. So what you see is the police chief here playing some of that video. Let me bring that up. But then he has some commentary about the scene that, in the context of everything we've known and heard for the last year, I think is pretty questionable. But here's the stuff that we typically see. Tren de Aragua members posting up with guns, presumably trying to breach into this particular apartment for whatever their purposes may be. We don't.
I noticed their tactics seem to have improved. They're like stacking up. They're taking cover.
They're training really well. Yeah, they probably have a whole facility. But here's the police chief explaining what they're doing.
What the Aurora Police Department became aware of after an investigation related to a number of calls for service, also related to a number of shooting incidences. The reason that I am showing this video now is because I want everyone to understand and to know that we are ahead of this. This isn't something that we are reacting to. This is something that we are proactively addressing.
It's that last part that I don't understand what he means. What do you mean you're not reacting and you're proactively addressing? If you said this time last year, it might be too late for being proactive. You're not only are you reacting, you're reacting way, way, way late. This has been a problem for a long time.
Yeah, I think didn't we actually speak about the report put together by the Perkins Coie law firm?
That's right. Yeah, I think you're the one that sent that to me. By the way, NeoUnrealist shout out. I forgot to do it at the top of your segment here. His links are in the description. You wonder where I get, well, I don't always have great information, but sometimes if I have a piece of information, you think, wow, that's really insightful. Where did Matt get that? NeoUnrealist sends me a lot of stuff, and the sources are very often things I haven't seen elsewhere, including last year, the Perkins Coie report on Tren de Aragua. That was incredibly useful. And the other thing I want to say to you, and thanks for that contributed directly to the first ever hit piece of my career, where USA Today, in the context of the tenant debacle, said that I was pushing, careful with my misspeak there, pushing misinformation, and they smeared me on that basis. But of course, the Perkins Coie investigation that you had sent to me was where I got a lot of the information on what was happening in Aurora, and that was the law firm investigating, and they're talking to people who live there. That's why I always got a kick out of not only the personal smear against me, but people who are saying this wasn't happening. It's not like people made it up or they're just speculating.
And let us not forget,
it's people who live there describing.
Arrests were made of Tren de Aragua members as a result of that. Remember the one where they threatened the building manager to kill him? Well, they arrested the two guys that threatened to kill him.
Yeah.
How is that fake?
So what do you, it sounds like you've listened to this police chief maybe a little bit more than I have. At least I don't remember much of his commentary prior. But what do you, why is he saying that they're being proactive when even in the context of just this incident, they're reacting to what Tren de Aragua is already doing? What does he mean here?
I think it's just standard CYA language. I mean, if you watched a press conference and you weren't aware of the events that stretch back, I think, to the summer of last year. I think in July, August was the first time people were getting inklings of this. If you didn't know about that, you'd say, oh, guys, this police chief sounds like he's really trying to do something about this. But with the knowledge of that, yeah, now he's just trying to make himself look good.
Do you have anything else you want to say about Tren de Aragua? Otherwise, I'll get into this Karmelo Anthony business.
Yeah, I'd just point out that for something that doesn't exist, the U.S. government, or ICE, has arrested and detained 2,700 Tren de Aragua members. And that's just since Trump took office on January 20th. So for something that doesn't exist, we're up to now 3,000 almost of these illegal alien criminals arrested in just a few months.
And they're right around here. I know that for a lot of people, maybe even myself a few years ago, you think of illegal immigration and specifically foreign gangs as a border area problem. No, man, especially gangs like this that are in the business of drug trafficking and other business operations, or, Kilmar Rego Garcia, human trafficking for construction worker type stuff. They're traveling all over. We've got busts up here almost at the Canadian border. I'm sure you probably do. I'm sure you got plenty in New York to the extent that ICE agents are allowed to exist there. Have you left New York yet? Or are you still there?
In the process. I mean, this place, especially if they arrest this communist, I mean, if they elect a communist.
You're not a Mamdani fan?
Doomed. No. Oh my Lord. I mean, de Blasio is left enough. This guy is full blown. His father was a Marxist professor in Uganda or something.
Nobody really knows. Yeah. Well, wherever. We tried to figure out where he came from or whatever his backstory was. Who knows? Just a hodgepodge of foreign nonsense.
But
anyway.
Speaking of that you're aware of that sniper situation in Coeur d'Alene, right?
I heard about it before the stream started. So my understanding is someone called a report about a fire as a means to trap emergency responders or firefighters and then shot them. Is that what happened?
Yeah, there's I think a total of 11 shot now. It's like this person, the sheriff has basically put it out and said, anyone that has an open shot at this guy, just take him out. I've never heard that before.
So the guy's not in custody. He called a bunch of firefighters, shot them, and escaped.
They're not even sure it's one guy. I mean, they can't be sure.
Wow. Okay. So, but that's that happened earlier this afternoon or evening, or I saw it breaking right before I started streaming.
Yeah. Now they're bringing in the heavy militarized, big armor, law enforcement type, big MRAP vehicles and that sort of thing.
So we're going to try another good old fashioned North Idaho standoff, you say?
I say if they're going to do that, it might as well just drone strike them. Why subject all these people to his being shot?
Call up Obama. He'll get him. He's got nothing going on. All right. Let's talk a little bit of Karmelo Anthony, of course, in the case of the stabbing of Austin Metcalf, charged with murder. And of course, all the evidence seems to point to murder, even though his spokesman and his legal team, I guess they're going to make a self-defense case, or at least that's what they say. But really, the update in the story has to do with the questions of what is going on with this guy's money, because now Karmelo Anthony and his team are saying we're poor, we need a public defender, when they raised $600,000 on GoFundMe. And as recently as a few weeks ago, we're saying they hadn't even accessed that money yet. So what's going on with his fundraising?
So he had a GoFundMe, which the last time I looked was up to $541,000, but that was a few hours ago. Who knows what it is now? The family has raised their donation request to $1.4 million. So they've raised over $500,000, but the GoFundMe, I guess, never explicitly said that it was for his defense. I guess they had a bullet point that they added and they put it at the bottom. And he has filed officially, it's on the court docket, as an indigent defendant,
right?
Meaning I have no money.
Yeah.
Now, technically, he's 17 years old, and I believe that the test can't be extended to your relatives, so he may technically be indigent. But I think people, from what I've been seeing on TikTok and YouTube, is a lot of black YouTubers and TikTokers who believed in this case are now saying, wait a minute, what did we give that money for? What happened to the money?
Well, yeah, that's what is going. I suppose there's the fine print, and then there's clearly the intent. I don't have the GoFundMe up. I wonder if it's linked from this story.
Well,
but the premise of the GoFundMe was legal defense, was it not?
I read through it, and if you actually read through it, at no point in that GoFundMe does it say he's innocent. So
well, it does. I don't even know that it has to, but did it say it is for his legal defense?
There is a bullet point. They list a bunch of bullet points of what they're going to use the money for. And the last one, the absolute last one was, secure defense attorneys.
Oh, that's the last one. Did it say cool cars with sweet rims?
Yes.
And awesome houses?
Living spaces, security, and there is
So it
reports.
did. Okay, so maybe I was going to say, why would the Texas Attorney General not get involved in investigating this for fraud? But maybe I haven't looked at the GoFundMe. Maybe it was a lot more transparent than I understood. Maybe it's just dummies who got sucked into this, even though the fine print told you exactly what this was.
Well, I'm going to point out that this is just speculation on my part. I think the bulk of this money, what really happened is this Dominique Alexander character who's sort of shepherding the family through this process.
Yeah.
And I think basically his grift, I mean, he's done this kind of thing before, is that he just finds a way to siphon money out of these families that go through these cases.
He's a disciple of Ben Crump and the rest of them. Yeah.
Exactly. So, I mean, he's out of the mold of, Al Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, the old grift. You just latch onto these cases and just milk them for cash. And the family ends up holding the bag because now there's their kid and he's filing as an indigent client defendant. It's going
to be really weird when he rolls up in a Cadillac to meet his
well, there is
to meet his
video
public
of them
defender. Yeah,
living in a $900,000 house, which they say they're renting or leasing, and there was a Cadillac Escalade sitting in the in front of the house. Whether they bought that, leased it, or whatever, they're claiming it doesn't belong to them. But the language they use is cagey. We've not purchased. Okay, but does that mean you could have leased it or rented it?
Ironically, it sounds like they had a lawyer write that language. They used some of the money to hire a guy to write up all these technicals.
Well, that's the other thing. They say they haven't purchased the house. Okay, you haven't purchased the house, but I imagine the rent on a $900,000 house is pretty significant.
Yeah. Well, speaking of Dominique Alexander, this is the guy who runs this activist organization called the Next Generation Action Network. And he's sort of their family representative. He's not a lawyer. He's not their legal representative. They have a different criminal defense attorney. But this is the guy who hosted that press conference a few weeks or a couple months back, which was just a disaster for the family. It made them look so ridiculous. The one where they kicked Austin Metcalf's dad out and said that he was disrespectful just for being there.
I noticed that the father, that dad, has actually posted on Facebook now. Finally, he finally seems like normal because looking at his post, it's Jeff Metcalf.
Yeah.
Indicted first-degree murder! ! Justice for Austin. So
I think he even wanted the death penalty too, but Karmelo's not eligible for it because he was 17 at the time of the crime. But yeah, I know that Jeff Metcalf took a lot of flack for some of his commentary about forgiving Karmelo immediately after. In the context of this press conference, he did nothing wrong. He just showed up to hear their side of the story, and they mistreated him and disrespected him. And that was Dominique Alexander's rise to fame, at least from my understanding of him. But
I recall, he didn't even say anything at the press conference.
No, he was silent. He didn't interrupt in any way. They just said that his presence was disrespectful. But Dominique Alexander was saying this week that this case, as in the Karmelo Anthony pending murder trial, yet another example of what it means to be black in America, even when our self-defense is questioned, or where even our self-defense is questioned, scrutinized, and politicized. Stand with us in the fight for white supremacy, which of course includes monetary donations. But I wonder, obviously, I think this is a financial grift in the way that you're describing, but as many others have questioned, I know Dominique Alexander's not the lawyer for Karmelo Anthony, but is this a legal path that they will take? And by that, I mean, will they, knowing that the facts of the case appear to be so slanted against Karmelo, are they just going to try to make this a racial reckoning case like OJ and hope that there's a jury that cares more about the racial reckoning than they do about the facts or the law? Do you think that's a strategy they'll take?
It only takes one. And to me, jury nullification is their only way to go here, because from what I understand, I haven't seen the video. There is a video, and people who have seen it in the media have described it as not being favorable to Karmelo Anthony, whereas they say although it's not clear, it's a bit pixelated due to the distance, that it doesn't appear to show any kind of altercation. There was no ambush by the two brothers.
Yeah.
The description I've seen was there's kids in a tent, and suddenly you could see that two of them are in an altercation where one is stabbing the other.
Yeah.
So there appears to have been no preceding fight.
And we can't, according to the reporting, we can't see this video because it won't be released because of strict guidelines about video that includes minors. But it does exist, and it will be present at the trial, I would assume.
Clearly, it did not exonerate him in front of the grand jury. They returned what do they call it? A bill to say charge him.
Yeah, so, he got the murder charge, the first-degree murder charge, yeah.
So clearly the grand jury felt, at least the majority of them.
Producer Tim sends me a message about the specifics in the fundraiser. $540,000 raised GoFundMe, but the fundraiser says, quote, while legal defense is a critical part of this journey, we want to make it but, there's always a big but coming. We want to make it clear that this fund is not solely dedicated to legal expenses. And by that, I assume they mean not at all dedicated to legal
almost
expenses.
None of it if he's going public defender route.
Yes. Yeah. That's the thing. You're exactly right. It's not just like, this is the best lawyer I could afford. What I don't understand though is I've heard their defense lawyer talking to media before. So who was he? I don't think he was a public defender.
That lawyer typically, I forget his name, but I know his fee scale. He'll take a $10,000 to $30,000 retainer for murder cases.
Okay.
And he charges between $400 and $500 an hour.
So they just fired him in the interest of getting a cool car and an awesome house.
Well, they haven't said what happened to him. They filed for a public defender, so presumably he has no representation. You can't have a lawyer and then file for a public defender. But in the state of Texas, the law says typically the public defender could either charge a flat fee or $100 per hour for in court and $75 an hour for out of court. Murder case is different. If it's a death penalty case, they may bump that up to $150, but basically the taxpayer is going to be on the hook for this guy's legal representation.
Well, is there anything else you want to mention about the Karmelo Anthony case before we're all finished up here?
Just the fact that I wish I had a montage to play for you, but if you look at Black TikTokers and YouTubers, they are extremely disappointed. I think since this news came out, only $5,000 has been raised, so I think the grift is pretty much done.
There's still $5,000 worth from idiots who are still contributing to this?
Yep. In the last 4 or 5 days, they've managed to squeeze 5,000, but they're asking for 1.4 million, so I'm guessing they're not going to hit that.
You're going to have to complain about white supremacists just a little more. But that is my guest, NeoUnrealist. Follow him on YouTube, Rumble, and X for in-depth news streams. Although, are you coming back to streaming sometime soon? Is that a thing, or what's going on? I don't mean to put you on the spot, but what's the status?
Well, between the house hunting and the potato just not being up to the challenge.
Got it.
It's just on hiatus.
Okay. Well, you can still follow him because, like I said, in-depth, highly detailed, very minutia-driven, legalese, technical streams, as Ketanji Brown Jackson would say. But YouTube, Rumble, X, all linked in the description. Anything else you'd like to promote before you're out of here?
Just to reemphasize that what you said earlier, all 6 Supreme Court justices signed on to that. Slam dunk. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting at the Supreme Court because she's got to be the youngest. Is she? Maybe she's not. Is Amy younger than Ketanji? I bet Ketanji's younger than Amy, right? Ketanji's got to be the youngest on the court. She's going to be there forever.
She has to be. Amy Coney Barrett has a passel of kids.
Yeah. All right. Well, I appreciate your contribution. Thanks as always for stopping by, and I'll catch up with you soon.
Good night.
There he goes. Appreciate my guest, NeoUnrealist. Find his links in the description. I'm going to go get Robert, and I'll come right back.
Stand back and stand by. stand back and stand by.
All right, thanks again to NeoUnrealist. Find his links in the description. Robert, are you on any kind of time crunch tonight?
Not at all.
Okay, well, that's good because I think we have 3 more hours of content that I want to get through. I appreciate your contribution, of course, but yeah, I got plenty more material. I think it's going to be a little bit of a long one, if that's all right with you. And
that's great. Can I make one quick comment about the Karmelo Anthony case?
Of course.
What he's doing is brilliant. I'm not saying that it is right. I'm saying that it is brilliant.
It's smart. Okay.
Yes. That money, I bet you that it is invested in a home because in Texas, there's some of the highest protections for homesteads. And so they're trying to keep the money from being taken in either restitution in a criminal case or as part of a civil suit. So if I was a betting man, I would tell you that's all in a homestead.
Sorry, I just realized I had your audio bumped way up. Audience is probably like, why is he so loud? It's because Neo was soft. Sorry about that. Okay, well, before we get back into the, and thank you for the insight as always, before we get back into Supreme Court stuff, maybe, I don't want to make Super Chatters wait the whole night. So you want to take a little bit of Super Chat? All right. Lbot, I got it right this time. Didn't even say iBot. Congratulations to me. Thank you, Lbot. Appreciate you as always.
I am not going to be niggardly.
Yakko, 1977, regarding the big beautiful bill, I've heard the parliamentarian referred to more times than I can recall compared to any other bill. Why do we need this position to meddle in passing legislation? Yes, my questions exactly. I know that I'm not dismissing the importance of rules, procedure, all of those things, but even in the role as described by Wikipedia and in its history, it is a role of advisor, and advisors can be not listened to when you disagree with their advice. That's the nature of the relationship. So I guess I don't understand why what she says, especially like when there's I don't think it's just plausible that gun language is not a violation of the bird rule. I think it's absolutely not a violation of the bird rule because it has the sort of tax implications or revenue implications that are required for reconciliation. So frequently an advisor may be wrong as a matter of the fact, and you, of course, are at liberty to disregard. Like, even in the context of a lawyer or a financial advisor, saying no to them doesn't even erase the relationship. You might say, hey, I appreciate your input. I disagree, but I like what you have to say most of the time, so I'm going to keep you around. Yeah, just do that. What's she going to do?
Yeah, I'm surprised this whole issue is not being decided by a random district court judge.
That's the real experts. We need to bring it to them. Lunachick, have you seen the video of the disabled black woman confronting Antifa in Portland? I saw a little bit of it today. So many good sound bites. You need to try and interview her. She's awesome. Tell you what, Lunachick, you send me an email with the link to that video because I saw it circulating today, but I didn't get a chance to listen to it. And if you have a contact or any lead, send it my way and I'll make sure Tim is on it. But yeah, to give you the context, if you didn't see this, Robert, and for anybody else listening, something about a woman of size and color, apparently irritated with the Antifa ongoings in the city of Portland, and she goes out and starts busting up their gathering, saying you guys are worse than ICE because you're playing loud music and doing all that. I don't like ICE either, but you guys really suck. Is something like that is the effect of her commentary, and that's all I saw. I don't know. It seemed very LaDonna-like, so I look forward to the full experience. P.S. Moto. Matt, your theme music is excellent. Give my regards to the composer and band that performed it. Well, that's my friend Chris Gard down under, and he is highly regarded. He's highly regarded by me and everybody in this audience. And if you enjoy his music, which I certainly do, you can find it his channel linked in the description. And the thing about Chris Gard, I've known a few talented musicians in my life personally, and I'm always amazed at their abilities because as someone who tries to play guitar and stuff myself, there's a certain level that I'll just never reach because I don't have that, whatever it is they have, I don't have that dexterity. I just don't have that. So I can appreciate it. But a guy like Chris Gard, it's not just that he's musically talented. He makes music of like every genre that all sounds awesome. He made the Susan Wiki song about his videos getting deleted, which is totally outside of his kind of metal or folksy wheelhouse. And then he also Susan quit and then died, and then Raju Mohan took over, and he makes this I'm like, how's he gonna make a Raju Mohan song? And he still makes something that sounds like Indian or Eastern in nature. How do you do this? And the guy's like a roofer for a job. He's not even like that sounds dismissive. I'm saying he's not a musician by profession. It's like a hobby for him that I'm sure he gets some side gigs or money out of, but it's not what he does every day all the time, and he's incredible at it.
All the songs are on point. I love all his work.
He's really, really good. And Chris, if you're out there, the invitation's open to come on the show, you son of a bitch. Last I heard, I don't like to put people on the spot. Last I heard though, it's roofing season. I'm very, very busy. Yeah, well, it's winter down under now, so no roofs to be roofed. Come back on the show. No, anytime. He's welcome to come back. Dangerous Space's friendly producer. Oh, for fuck's sake, affirmative action Jackson. Yet, yes, the district courts are being power hungry. Yeah. A couple of judges have even declared themselves essentially co-executives who get to decide how to run things. That's the line that sticks out to me. Yet it's the wait for it one, because wait for it, and then it's presented as though that conclusion is ridiculous. District court judges are power hungry. Yes, I didn't need to wait for it. That was already my opinion, and it's correct. Mm-hmm. So it's very defensible because it's based in fact. Dangerous Spaces also says, when Jackson famously said she didn't know what a woman was, I think we all assumed she was stupid. I think it showed her judicial view was based on feelings, which is counter to her role in SCOTUS. Well, in fairness, that's a lot of minutia. There's a lot of smokescreen. You got to know about chromosomes. You got to know about genetics. You got to know about biology. Didn't she say something like that? Who was it that said, I am not a biologist? Was that her line?
That was her.
Okay.
So, yeah, can you define woman? No, I can't. I'm not a biologist.
Never been a fan of the technicalities in any discipline. She's been consistent on that, I guess. Over on YouTube, Esoterica Unbound, it'll be interesting to see how the media will play the judicial smackdown of... What is this one? Jumanji Klaxon Brown? What's Klaxon? Something hateful that's over my head. I'm sure I'm in trouble for saying it.
Yeah, I'm sure I've just lost my job for hearing
Jumanji Klaxon Brown. I don't know. Normally they just cry racism, but in doing so, they risk highlighting just how underqualified she is. Yeah, I know it's a sort of a meme, or it's often cliche to say like stupid or evil. This is one of those opinions where I don't know. I'm squinting the whole time like, are you dumb or are you like bad or both? I can't tell.
I can't tell either. I mean this sincerely. Because the opinion, maybe she totally understands what she's saying and the implications of it, but she just doesn't care.
Well, and that's the reason that's so troubling too in a professional context, like just to be a lawyer in general, not even a Supreme Court justice. Now, I did very poorly on the LSAT way back in the day when I thought maybe someday I want to be a lawyer. But the problem is I didn't take the test seriously. And so the test is about logic games, and it's as much about knowing how to play a game. It's actually all that. It's not about knowledge really at all. It's a test of reasoning skills. But really, and you know this as a legal professional, so much of it, regardless of whether you're like a criminal lawyer or you're someone who's handling accounting and financial matters like you do, or you're someone who handles intellectual property or something like that. So much of legal thinking and strategy is next step thinking. If this, then the consequences will be that. Yeah. And in this decision, she seems to lack that capacity completely, which makes you wonder, how did you get as far as you did? But Joe Biden answered that question. I'm picking a black chick for this job. That's how. So it's kind of like, I don't know. I don't know what else to compare it to. To find someone at the highest level of a certain profession who appears not to exhibit the skills or the set of knowledge about that profession. And it's something, Amy Coney Barrett's exactly right. Like, I've read many a Sotomayor opinion and laughed at the idiocy. But this is something, Sotomayor at least seems to have some connection, not just to the law as she argues it, but to an understanding of if X, then Y.
Yeah.
Jackson is just, I like X, so it's X.
That's what I was saying. Like, Sotomayor, like, she understands the framework, so she will attack within it. Jackson was just outside of the framework, so the other justices are like, I can't even engage with what you're saying.
Cool post, bro.
Yeah.
They should have, what's that meme where they're like, I'm really happy for you, or I'm so sorry this has happened to you, whichever applies, but I'm not going to read all that. That's what they should have said. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Anyway, Bill McPherson. Oh, wait. I think I skipped one from Esoterica. My mistake. I'm amazed at what an unmitigated disaster the Biden administration has proven to be for the left, rather. Every time you turn around, their intellectual ASZ, what is that? Well, whatever it is, they're hanging out there for the world to see. It's like Dumb and Dumber on acid. Well, as I think disastrous and damaging as much of the Biden administration was, say the financial consequences, the economic consequences of the foolishness that was pursued, it's very possible that Ketanji Brown Jackson is the most significantly damaging piece of that entire legacy, because she'll be on the court, like you were saying, forever. She'll probably outlast us on that court.
Yeah, I mean, she's going to be there the next 30 years. And I mean, if this is a preview of what she's willing to do, if the left is ever able to put enough justices on the court who support her, I mean, that would, I don't know, it would be radical.
Bill McPherson. My wife's surgery went well, Matt. 95% removal of the astrocytoma. Currently, she can't walk. Please donate at Give, Send, Go. Support for spinal surgery is the name of the fundraiser. Christine needs much rehab. We have a 4-year-old and an 18-month-old. Help appreciated. Well,
we love you. You're very special.
I'm glad to hear that the procedure itself was a success, Bill. And Bill's going to come on the show at some point in the near future. We'll have him on. People who have listened to the call-in show for a long time may remember him. I know he has called in frequently before. And Bill's going to sit in on a stream or two with me. We'll talk about what's going on with his wife, and I'll be able. I don't have the link handy right now, but again, it's support for spinal surgery on Give, Send, Go if you want to look that up. But certainly, I will have the fundraiser available later when Bill joins the show coming up sometime soon. So thank you, Bill. All the best to you and your family, and Godspeed. Over on Odyssey, and then we'll get back into some news. Blankets. Matt, have you seen this? Apparently. It's funny. My wife, my family and I, we were at a neighborhood gathering yesterday, and there were some, it's food. It was a neighbor's birthday party, a little kid's birthday party, and food, drinks for kids, and we had a red Kool-Aid for our two sons, and we were. I'm not even going to try to recreate it, but we were going back and forth, my wife and I, trying to do impressions of RFK Jr. condemning the red dye in the in the Kool-Aid and how it needs to be banned, and we're ruining our children by doing this. I'm not going to recreate that moment, but I'm just saying this fits in that context. Smucker's has now announced they're removing artificial colors and dyes from their food. So the Make America Healthy movement is spreading at a mind-blowing rate. Nestle, Kraft, Heinz, and General Mills all made the same announcement. So my understanding is they're ditching the artificial dyes just voluntarily. There's no government order that's making them do this. I am not as attached to the dyes. I care less about the color of the food as I do the texture. And so as long as you give me my hydrogenated oil Skippy peanut butter, I have no dispute with this. But that's where I draw the line. I need the fake peanut butter, and I'll be happy with the rest.
Yeah, but this is good news. I mean, people should be making sourdough at home and make your own jams and make your own peanut butter. Like, this is nonsense anyways, but sure.
I forgot you're all into that. Like, how do you have time to read all these legal opinions and make your own bread?
Okay, to be fair, here in the last several months, I have not I have not been able to make my bread because I have been overwhelmed.
You've been buying bread, you son of a bitch. I knew it.
But I was making sourdough every morning. I make my own, like mayonnaise and jams. Like, yeah, I try not to buy that stuff, but I don't know. I've been overwhelmed, so I shouldn't.
Congratulations, butthead.
Very happy for your bread. Some good memes from Blankets. Appreciate it. Matt, Odyssey released a new monetization system on Thursday. I did see that. Now, I don't know, to catch people up on Odyssey really quick, they had a dispute with Stripe, the payment processor, so there was it wasn't clear how support on Odyssey would process. Now, I didn't make a big deal of that because I figured Odyssey would resolve it, and they have. So so now Odyssey has their own payment processor that is independent of Stripe, which is good news. I just haven't looked at all the inner workings of it, but I plan to this week. So thank you for supporting over on Odyssey, Blankets, and everybody else who chooses to. Appreciate it very much. I'm glad to see Odyssey has built another layer of independence from the powers that be. But let's get back into some Supreme Court news.
I'll have to just circle back with you.
And I'm already at like a 2-hour stream, and I actually thought we were going to get to this in the first hour. So it tells you where my mind is. But let's see what we can do. Because that was not that decision on nationwide injunctions and birthright citizenship, at least tangentially, that was not the only Supreme Court decision of consequence released this week. So another major decision released Friday. The court says those parents in Maryland have a First Amendment right to, or at least, this is going to be the effect of this. It's a little more technical because they didn't actually decide and they sent it back to the lower courts. But what's going to be the effect of this is that parents in general have a First Amendment right to opt their kids out of gay book readings in public elementary school or other materials that may run afoul of, say, religious teachings or violate your right to free exercise of religion under the First Amendment. So the decision was again 6-3, usual lines. Now, Robert and I actually went through the argument of this case back when it was argued. I think that was April. But there was a lot of Jumanji insanity in that. There was a lot of craziness. That was one of the more entertaining arguments I've heard in a long time. And I actually didn't get to read this decision in detail. Maybe you did, and you can add some insight to me for me. But my understanding in the general sense, school district in Montgomery County, Maryland, they want to include these LGBT themed books in their curriculum. This is mandatory that the books be included. And originally the school district had said parents could opt their kids out of hearing these books or participating in the reading and discussion of these books. And then a critical mass of parents did opt out. So they said, no, it's mandatory now. You have to listen. I think it was, if the teacher decides you have to listen, is the way that the rule worked. Like, it wasn't the state saying every school district will teach this, but it is part of the curriculum. And if the teacher opts to include the gay book, you will listen to the gay book. There's no opt out because too many people opted out. Mm-hmm. And so this case was argued on First Amendment free exercise grounds, as in forcing these books on kids in a public school as a term of attendance at that public school violates the parental right and through their parents, the right of the children to free exercise of religion. And in dissent, the majority opinion was written by Alito to that effect. In dissent, Sonia Sotomayor once again writing this opinion, and she argued it's not a First Amendment violation because it's mere exposure, not advocacy. And you and I were laughing about this phrasing when it was argued a few months ago. Mere exposure is a legal term in First Amendment case law, and what that means is the idea that you're just exposed to an idea without some sort of coercion mechanism to accept the idea, or even really any expectation that you do accept the idea. That's not necessarily a First Amendment violation of your free exercise rights, your free exercise of religion rights. So when Sotomayor says that, that's what she means. She's referencing a term in the case law. But of course, when you say mere exposure and you're talking about sexual topics with kids, you kind of wonder.
He touched young people.
Are there some Cuomo themes going on here? I can't say mere exposure in this context without laughing a little bit because it doesn't sound right. But that was Sotomayor's case. Did you get a chance to read this decision?
Yeah. And really, I'll just add a tiny bit more, but I think this is a phenomenal case because the court very much addressed this idea of exposure. And essentially what the majority says is, look, one of the key things that is included in the free exercise of religion is to be able to raise your children according to your own faith. And in a lot of this case actually was based, or the arguments rather, were based on an older case that applied to Amish children because the Amish wanted to take their children out of school after 8th grade. And they succeeded. But essentially, over time, that case called Yoder was interpreted more and more narrowly, to the point that people started to think that the case was almost worthless because nobody else was ever going to kind of meet the same criteria, if you will, as the plaintiffs in that case. And here the Supreme Court says, no, that's not the case at all. There's many other instances when, the parents' right to raise their children the way they see fit can be violated. And they did not buy the exposure argument, which I think is the main takeaway from the case. They said, no, when you look at the books, they're clearly normative. And that's the language they use. Like it's clear when you read
this is good and opposing it is bad. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So they go, no, when you read the gay books, it is clear that the message is being gay is good. And so this is a violation of the parents' religious right and religious rights. Rather.
They need to balance the curriculum. They need a story of, let me tell you about the AIDS. Johnny got the AIDS. So you need to see the other side of the argument, I think. Yeah.
But really, I think this is one of the most positive cases, or let me phrase it differently. One of the most powerful cases against the gay lobby we have seen in a long time. This will have large ramifications. I think other lawsuits will follow where they go, hey, all of this other gay curriculum, it's also no mere exposure. It's just like this.
And just to be clear, so there's no mischaracterization, no mischaracterizing and misunderstanding for people who may not be as familiar with this case. It is not about banning any books from school. The parents who brought this lawsuit, they're not trying to stop others from all the exposure to these themes that they would like. They just want opt-outs. We don't want our children forced to be to participate in the reading or discussion of these books. We don't want our kids to be forced to listen to the gay story. And Sotomayor, in her understanding or her reasoning on the case, she's saying you have no First Amendment right to refuse. If you go to public school, you will hear the homo story. Okay, that's the It's not mere exposure; it's required exposure. You will be exposed. And Sotomayor, part of her case, so it's mere exposure, as in it's not coercive, even though listening to the story is coerced. I guess I suppose her understanding is it's not normative in the way you're describing. It's like just an objective description of being gay. It's not being gay is good. Okay. There's clearly coercion here insofar as you will listen to the story if you go to public school. But Sotomayor, another part of her argument is just the consequence of what will result. She says that schools are going to be burdened. If you have to create alternative lesson plans for these opt-outs, it's going to create chaos. Here's an alternative, though. You could just not push all these gay books that the parents want to opt out of in critical mass. You could actually teach things that are popular and appreciated by the parents. That would be orderly. That would not be chaotic. But Sotomayor seems to think that there's going to be not just chaotic, that it's going to be a burden for public schools to operate. She is saying this may be so chaotic that public schools may end, or at least the decision threatens the very essence of public education.
Good.
So please, Sonia, we can't handle any more winning. That's enough winning from the court. Don't tell me about how public education is going to end. I can't take it anymore. I think the nice thing is we can all agree. Everybody should have. You talk about ways that justices could have trolled Ketanji Brown Jackson. I wish the rest of the justices would have concurred in part and dissented in part, agreeing only to Sotomayor's characterization that the very essence of public education is teaching elementary kids about gay sex. If we all agree on that premise, then I think we've really made progress as a country. But as I mentioned, the case is not necessarily over. My understanding here, you tell me if this is correct, it's a little bit technical. The holding here is that school district policies mandating material or lessons that violates or potentially violates the free exercise of religion, subject to strict scrutiny in review, as in the highest standard of review in the federal court system that applies to a fundamental right, in this case, your free exercise of religion right. That doesn't mean that it's unconstitutional necessarily. It means strict scrutiny is the appropriate analytical framework. Restrictions on your First Amendment rights can still pass strict scrutiny if they are pursuant to a compelling government or state interest, and they're narrowly tailored. Now, the court didn't say that this policy is necessarily constitutional or not. They sent it back down to the lower courts for the process to be reviewed under that standard, even though it's basically all but said in this decision. When we evaluate this under strict scrutiny, we're not. You guys are not reading the homo books. Sorry.
That's exactly right. Because
Okay.
this is also in the case of an injunction. So it's technically not a decision on the merits.
Yeah.
But the party has to show that they are likely to succeed on the merits, and so that's why the court gets into that. So it's going to go
What do you
back.
mean? Injunctions are still. I thought it was. This is a country under a king now. Who there's no such. I thought the court in another decision erased injunctions entirely.
I mean, let's support Justice Jackson and say some random court can ban gay books everywhere.
Yeah. All right. If we're going to play the game, let's play the game.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Do you have anything else you want to say on this case, on the Mahmoud v. Taylor gay books in the elementary school case?
No, I'll just emphasize how positive it is. I was shocked, honestly, by what the court did here. It will have ramifications, and they will be very good.
All right. Another big decision, Planned Parenthood may itself be getting aborted. Good. Or it has or will be from several states now. Or as NPR describes it, if mere exposure is unfortunate phrasing, I guess there's no reason to think that Planned Parenthood is gay, I guess, but NPR, first sentence in their reporting. The Supreme Court delivered a backdoor blow to Planned Parenthood on Thursday?
That's a big game, man.
What? Why? Why is it it seems like a front door blow. Like you guys are not getting a major source of revenue anymore. What's the back door? I don't understand what they mean by that, but okay. The decision was 6-3 on Thursday. And the Supreme Court ruled that states can exclude Planned Parenthood from eligibility in their Medicaid programs. So, of course, federal law already bans federal money going to support abortion directly. We're not talking about that. We're talking about Planned Parenthood getting reimbursed through Medicaid for services that are not abortion itself. Now, of course, Planned Parenthood is the biggest abortion provider in the country. So if you're paying them for other services, it's going to indirectly fund abortion. But strictly speaking, we're not talking about Medicaid funding of their abortions. We're talking about Medicaid funding of the other stuff that they do. And Medicaid is a partnership between the federal government and the state governments to offer health insurance for the benefit of low-income, disabled people, children. To participate in the program, states have to meet certain requirements, certain criteria. And this case dealt with who holds the right to determine what an eligible provider is. And the effect of what the court is saying is that states hold the power in that area, that an eligible provider to be reimbursed for services under their Medicaid programs, it's going to be decided by the states. The technical reason why, as far as I understand, and again, I didn't have as much time to get into this one as I would have liked, but Gorsuch and the majority are saying that in the law that establishes and governs Medicaid, it doesn't say that if you think that your rights to the services, your rights to the payment that cover your services are violated, you have a right to sue. The solution there, as I gather by implication, would be that since Congress created no such right, the remedy for inappropriate administration of Medicaid by the states would be for Congress to clarify with law themselves, not for just a guy to say, I want, or a chick, or whoever's going to Planned Parenthood for their medical services to say, I have a right to Medicaid reimbursement at this Planned Parenthood because it is an eligible provider in the way that I see fit. So again, a little bit technical, but the result is a major payer for Planned Parenthood is now chopped in a lot of states. So it's not just South Carolina that's been trying to do this. Texas already has and is enforcing it. Missouri, same thing. Arkansas, same thing. Those 4 states are part of 14 total that have tried to exclude Planned Parenthood from their Medicaid programs in some form over the last decade. A lot of that has been caught up in legal challenges. Now there's a legal green light. States are going to follow suit. And even before this decision, Planned Parenthood has already been struggling financially, closing clinics across the country. And it's not just like the Dobbs overturning Roe crackdown. They're struggling in blue states. A bunch of clinics closing in Minnesota, a bunch of clinics closing in New York, and more places like that. And of course, Medicaid payments, generally, the reimbursements are very low, which is why a lot of medical providers often don't accept Medicaid because it's not worth their time because they're hardly getting paid at all. In the case of Planned Parenthood, Medicaid reimbursement might be better than no reimbursement, which is the alternative they may be facing. Planned Parenthood, already in financial trouble, maybe in significantly more financial trouble. And yeah, likewise, this is not just this is a good thing from a legal perspective. By that, I mean, I don't just mean I like the outcome because I don't like Planned Parenthood. I mean that I think Congress administering the program and Congress correcting the problem where they think states have gone. Ideally, I don't want Congress involved in the administration of medicine and healthcare at all. But if we're going to do this, it seems to me that the court got the solution to any failures in administration correct. And so I think that's a win for the law, separation of powers, the states, all of that. But of course, just in moral terms, to the extent this may cause a reduction in abortion so-called services in this country, massive win in that regard as well.
Absolutely. I think this shows how much of a farce the whole talk about, no funds, no federal funds go to abortions, right? That has been the longstanding deal that we always hear about in Congress. Like Congress will not fund abortions. I forget the name of that deal. It goes
the Hyde Amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if we are giving Medicaid funds to these clinics that do abortions for essentially incidental services, then federal funds have been going to abortion clinics forever. Because people may not realize, but the way that these medical things get billed is, let's say you go to the doctor and the doctor does 5 things. Each of those things gets allocated what's called a CPT code. And then you file claims based on those codes. It's like, hey, pay me for code 123, whatever, 124, whatever the case may be. And so I'm guessing here, but I do have some experience in the medical field as an accountant, not as a doctor. I bet that these clinics were doing abortions, but then it's essentially everything that was not technically the abortion was being paid by federal funds anyways.
And these things, it's not like you got an abortion and a foot massage. You got an abortion and a haircut. You got an abortion and then you got a bunch of supplementary stuff that was necessary for the abortion. Exactly. Like you're not paying for maybe the actual forceps or whatever the process may be, but you're paying for support services that are necessarily, you wouldn't be there getting that service were it not for the abortion.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And also, I thought that Planned Parenthood only got like 2% of its funding for abortions or
using
whatever.
That funny accounting. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, that's exactly the funny accounting that we're seeing at play here. And it just makes evident that all of that was a lie.
Yeah, well, you're exactly right. That if everything we were told is true, the response from Planned Parenthood and their supporters should be, oh, so what? That was not our financial arrangement. I don't know what you're talking about. We're not worried at all. This has no impact on us. Maybe 2%, but that's it.
They say now women won't have access to healthcare like well beyond abortions. I bet if Planned Parenthood went to these states and said, okay, we will stop doing abortions, will you still give us Medicaid funds? The states would go, sure. If you're just a regular women's clinic, have at it.
If I was in that state, I'd say we get to have someone watching though. because I don't believe you.
Fair.
But I do agree with your premise that if they came to heel on that the states probably would work with them. I think that's probably true.
Yeah. I mean, they could say, hey, abortions was only 2% of our services or whatever. So let's stop those. And then everything is copacetic. But nope.
Well, last thing I want to talk about before I get into some hoax hate. I just find this news to be hilarious and ironic because Hunter Biden continues in the antics and the legal woes of Hunter Biden. They're not in fact over. And I thought the era of Hunter Biden kind of was gone with his dad. He was pardoned in his criminal case. So it's not just like the stuff he did with his gun and maybe his tax evasion and all that. Remember, the pardon was anything he did in the last decade, effectively. So we're not going to get a lot of Hunter Biden scandal, at least legally, coming up. No, I was wrong. Now his own lawyers are after him, or his own former lawyers, saying he never paid them. So this week, Winston and Strawn filed a lawsuit against their former client, Hunter Biden. The law firm represented Hunter in several complex matters, including his criminal trial in Delaware District Court. So that was the gun charges case. They also represented him in his tax case, which I think was in California. But they represented him in some of his most recent criminal matters. Or I guess he didn't have criminal matters before, right? That was the only Hunter Biden criminal stuff, was the guns and the taxes, I think. Anyway. In this lawsuit, the firm says they provided Hunter with extensive legal services, which generated a substantial amount of fees. They said Hunter has not paid much, really any of those fees, and Hunter now owes them $50,000 in fees and interest. Now, if you agree to represent Hunter Biden, I understand contracts are contracts, so not arguing against that point, but I don't know. You guys are... Didn't you foresee some of this? And the big question, will they accept payment in paintings? Will they, I know the value has really dropped lately, but will they accept office decor from some Hunter Biden originals to compensate them for all the effort they put into that case? And yet, another question I have about this, obviously all their legal work was irrelevant. It didn't matter because Hunter got pardoned in the end. It would be quite the accusation to say that this sort of thing was a scam in its design. Like, I'm going to get these lawyers and I know that like I'll have them work on my behalf and do all this work for me, but I know none of it will even matter in the end because I know dad's going to pardon me like on the last second anyway. So who gives a shit? Do you think that, is this just Hunter? Like, is Hunter has he had a relapse and is he smoking Parmesan cheese from the carpet again? He just forgot to pay the bill. Or was this like a scam by the Bidens, knowing that the legal work was all just a show and it didn't really matter anyway?
I don't know. This is so strange. I can't make any sense of it because, in a case like this, lawyers get paid up front. That's the retainer. Right. So like, let's say that you were in legal trouble. I would go, hey, the retainer is $10,000. Mm-hmm. And as the retainer starts going down, let's say it gets to $2,000, I would call you and be like, hey, Matt, you're going to have to pay up another $8,000 and bring the retainer back to 10. And so as a lawyer, I'm always positive. Like, I always have some of your money that I haven't even earned. So for the lawyers to get in a situation where they're upside down, funny business is afoot. I can't even make heads or tails.
I didn't know. I've never hired a lawyer for that level of work, so I didn't know that do you actually control that money? Let's say that you took a retainer. Is it in your bank account or is it held by like some third party?
Well, you have to put it in, well, this depends on the state, but normally you would put it in a trust account. Okay. But that's really just kind of a nice way of putting it. It is fully under my control as an attorney. And then when I bill you, say, let's say it's $100 an hour, and I bill you for 10 hours, I would, like, without your consent or whatever, I just move $1,000 from that trust account over to my account.
It doesn't make, it's like you're sitting down with Hunter Biden. Okay, Hunter, attorney-client privilege here. 10% for the big guy, 10% for me too. I know you have bags of money and I'm getting some of that. How, for everything you can say about Hunter Biden, a shortage of money does not seem to be the problem. So how this happened from his perspective of, I guess, an inability or forgetfulness to pay is what I was thinking. But I appreciate that you came at this from the other side of the as a lawyer, not just in the standard practice of how one would operate, but knowing what you know about the client, especially, why wouldn't you secure that money up front?
Absolutely. I am sure that whatever happened in this situation is so shocking and weird that we could never guess. But hopefully someday it'll come to light.
Well, but you would think it might in a lawsuit, but if it is true that there was some kind of foul play here, they're going to have to play a weird game where they have to cover their own asses trying to get Hunter Biden. And by the way, all over what they say is like 50 grand. So it would be pretty risky to the firm. I know that 50 grand is a lot of money. I'm not dismissing that. If somebody owed me 50 grand and didn't pay it, I would care too. However, if I knew that pursuing the 50 grand maybe carried risk of sinking the business, if there was sketchy behavior behind it, I might just say, all right, Hunter, how about you come over? We just talk about this privately a little bit. The lawsuit, it would be risky if they did something wrong.
Yeah, honestly, I was thinking about that too, that the amount is just weird because why is a big law firm suing for 50 grand? Because for us mortals, 50 grand is a lot of money. For these people, it isn't. And they're going to now fight this public figure for that amount. I don't know. It's just all very strange, but I'm here for the show. I hope that we get to find out what in the world went on.
Well, speaking of the show, it's time for Hoax Hate.
And now, the nobody saw it happen, but it's totally a product of Trump's America hoax hate crime of the week.
Ah, shit, it's backwards. You think they'll notice?
Of course, this week was the rise of Muslim communist Zohran Mamdani. I think I said his name right that time. I'll congratulate myself for that. I'll get it wrong next. Zohran Mamdani in New York City.
He touched young people.
Never forget how much he touched young people, Andrew Cuomo. Mamdani defeated heavy favorite former governor Andrew Cuomo in the Democrat primary for New York City mayor on Tuesday, so he is presumably your next mayor of New York, although Eric Adams is running as an independent. Maybe Andrew Cuomo runs as an independent. There are still some wrinkles to be ironed out in how this develops. But whatever happens, Zohran Mamdani is he's now suffering from Islamophobic hate and threats. In the week leading up to his victory, he held back tears about all the mean things that people have been saying to him lately.
I get messages that say the only good Muslim is a dead Muslim. I get threats on my life, on the people that I love, and I try not to talk about it. Because the function of racism, as Toni Morrison said, is distraction. My focus has always been on making this a city that's affordable, on making this a city that every New Yorker sees themselves in. It takes a toll. Because this is a city that every single person deserves to be in. It's a city that we all belong to.
Just a gay, muzzy terrorist.
Welcome to being a public figure. That's kind of how it goes. I try not to talk about it, but also I'm here to talk about it. Like, how convenient for you. But it's actually, now, is what he's saying true? I'm sure there probably are some very mean tweets. I'm not even dismissing that point. I'm sure he's exaggerating it for political effect. I'm sure he's highlighting it for political effect, not because he's actually afraid or scared or anything like that. But the commentary he said, well, this is a city where everyone deserves to be and that all belong to. And it's one of those statements where you just think about it for a second. Take Mumbai, for example. I know that his mom is Indian. Does everyone deserve to be in Mumbai, and do all belong to Mumbai, or is it an Indian city that Indians belong in? And by extension, is New York City an American city that Americans belong in? And if we flood it with foreign people, with foreign ideologies, foreign traditions, might it become something else and not New York City anymore? Maybe that's what we're watching in real time right now. But the point is that a city defined by everybody all the time and everything, it's actually defined by nothing. And it's just a place for the taking and for redefinition, which again is kind of happening here. So, I mean, maybe he's actually being a little too honest with that statement. But if you ask people around the world, hey, what is New York City? they're going to describe to you a list of a series of American characteristics and features. They're not going to say that New York City is a city for anyone in the world and that all belong to, and reference it in a way that involves Saudi Arabia. Well, poor choice. You might talk about some Saudi things, I guess, in New York City. How about Sudan? I don't know. Talk about things related to Sudan just as much as you might talk about things related to New York City. And so I just found the commentary about a city that all deserve to be in and that all belong to be very interesting. Now, that's beside the point of whether the hate he's receiving is legitimate or if it's just amplified for the purposes of his political rhetoric. But what do you think? Am I reading too much into that, or is his message there incidental, or is he actually like revealing the plot a little bit?
No, I think you're right. I can't even make sense of that statement in the context of something that is made up of private property, because a city is a bunch of private property, and to the extent that there is anything public is to support that private property. It's like these people have come together and they have agreed like, hey, we need security and water and electricity and whatever. So like, I don't even understand for a city like to be like, everyone belongs here. What are you talking about? That doesn't make any sense. It's like if somebody said everyone belongs in my house. No, like my house is mine. You don't belong here.
Right. They are there at your permission. And if they have it, they're a welcome guest. But if they don't, they're a home intruder. And that's a very important distinction.
Exactly. And just because we add more homes, like let's say now we have 10 homes and it's a neighborhood, for us to say, well, in this neighborhood, everyone belongs here. No, it is still 10 homes owned by people. And only we belong here.
Yeah. Well, speaking of made up hate and attacks, presumably for political purposes and convenience, former Congressman Jamaal Bowman, also of New York. Recall Bowman got in trouble for pulling the fire alarm at a congressional office building before a vote, and his defense in what resulted in a criminal charge was, sorry, I'm retarded, and I thought the fire alarm opened the door. And that was actually a credible defense because he seems very retarded. So I believe him. I don't think it was an operation or anything deceptive at all. I think he's just a dummy. Jamaal Bowman was primaried out of office last year, so now he has the only job more shameful than congressman, which is analyst on CNN. And so on CNN this week, Jamaal Bowman said that the reason that black people have worse health conditions, generally speaking, there are poorer health outcomes in the black population. The reason that is the case is because of all the stress that black people endure from being called the N-word.
And the problem is we are not dealing with America's original sin and its disease of hate and racism towards black and brown people and sexism towards women and anti-LGBTQ sentiment. We are not dealing with that. Your colleagues in the Republican Party do not hold each other accountable when it comes to the racism that comes from the party on a consistent basis.
Congressman, I mean, where are you on?
You can't be calm about this. I'm a black man in America. The reason why heart disease...
I'm white, I can't comment
Listen
on
to what I'm saying. The reason why heart disease and cancer and obesity and diabetes are bigger in the black community is because of the stress we carry from having to deal with being called the N-word directly or indirectly every day. If your colleagues would listen and try to learn and engage and grow and stop being so hateful, we could have a better country.
Jamaal.
But unfortunately, we're still here.
What is being called the N-word indirectly? I was indirectly called the N-word. Do I just like, you generic N's out there? Is that, I don't know.
I think he's referring to a certain sounder that you played in a certain episode. That
the one you were on?
Yes.
Let me see if I can find that one.
He may or may not imitate monkey noises.
Get out of my face, you fucking nigger!
Oh, I thought you meant that one. You were talking... You were talking about, where is it?
Good job acting like a monkey. Ooh, ooh, ooh.
That's indirectly being called the N-word. Hey, you're the one that invited these. I didn't. They're buried deep in the soundboard. I don't usually deploy them anymore.
But, well, yeah, I'm sure the reason that they're fat and unhealthy or whatever is because they're indirectly being called the N-word. I don't even know.
The thing is, like, okay, even if I took his point to be true, which of course I don't, that you have so much stress from people like hating you and calling you a mean name all the time that you cannot take control of your own health, you're still saying that you are incapable of any personal accountability, any personal responsibility at all. The premise here, black people have terrible health outcomes because people hate them so much. Explain bad health outcomes in, say, African countries where there are very few, if any, white people around to hate them so much, and yet health outcomes still generally poor. In fact, in many cases, the total lack of health care means health outcomes aren't even measured, really. You die at age 30 because it might as well be the 1500s, when in fact it's 2025. So even if it's true, like the question is still, why can't you get past other people hating you? I'm sure Jamaal Bowman gets way more hate. I'll grant that point. I get plenty of emails of people saying to me, mean things.
You suck, fuck you.
Tweets that say stuff like that. Sometimes it does cause me stress. You know what happens when I get in a negative mindset because of something mean someone said to me on the internet? I leave the computer. I go do something productive with my life. I try to do something healthy, maybe break a sweat. Maybe I'll think about the choices I'm making in my life that matter more than some idiot's opinion about me on the internet. My point is, the premise that like someone else hating you removes your agency, that you must eat the donut, you must smoke the cigarette, you must drink the booze, you must do the drugs. I mean, that's preposterous enough. But plenty of people hate white people. Plenty of people hate people for any number of reasons. See Jamaal Bowman himself. You can hate him for any number of reasons beyond his race. I guess what Jamaal Bowman doesn't really realize here is the futility of his own philosophy. Here's a better philosophy. Assume the things that are bad in your life that you don't like, they're your fault. They're not someone else's fault. And you operate accordingly, because that ensures that you will do everything in your power to change them. And when you actually try to change the things in your life that you don't like, you will discover, wow, I have a lot more control over my own life and the quality of it than I realized. Once I assumed that the stuff in my life that sucked was my fault and I worked to change it, I actually changed quite a lot. If instead you sit around pointing fingers at other people, blaming them for the quality of your life, even if you're right, even if they are bad guys who do bad stuff to you, if you assume otherwise, you're still going to exercise every possible level of influence that you have to change it, and that's going to be a good thing on balance over time. The fact that this guy thinks he can sit around pointing fingers at other people to achieve health, prosperity, you don't have to grant the cluelessness of the factual premise here to realize the philosophical flaw. Don't be Jamaal Bowman pointing fingers at other people. Assume your life sucks because you suck, because it's true. And I say that as someone whose life has sucked because I sucked before, and it probably will in the future too. But he has more to say. That's not even the full extent of his commentary, but I want to give you a chance to opine on some of that if you want to.
I fully agree with what you said, and I do feel bad. Now I'm going to speak here with my experience with quote unquote the black community. Like people that I've met in real life.
That was indirectly calling them ends.
I'm sure that's what they thought, right?
Yeah.
And then they ate a candy bar or whatever.
A baker's dozen, right down the hatch. Yeah.
But if this is not fairly representative of whatever, the black community, I'm sorry. But it does seem, in my experience, that there is this idea that the game is so rigged that they can't get ahead. And this is something that they tell themselves, like within their own community. And it creates this exact attitude of like, why even try? Why try to do anything? The game is so rigged, we could never win. And it's really sad to watch, because I live in the South. I've been in the South for 20 years, presumably where all the racists are at or whatever. And I've yet to meet people who just have it out for black people. It's like the game is not rigged. If you want to succeed, you can. But the first thing you need to do is exactly what you're describing. It's like, own your decisions. You need to try. And then I bet things are going to be okay.
Well, how could you, though, if you're just walking down the street and people are saying to you,
"You suck, fuck you."
Jamaal Bowman says that's exactly what happens to him. He just takes a walk in New York, and people, often evil white men, just come up and accost him.
I don't want to fight. I just want to chill. I just want to not. I was walking down the street the other day. Some white dude, bald head, he looked me, called me a piece of shit to my face. Said, "I'm gonna get what's coming to me." Why I gotta deal with that, dog? In Yonkers, New York.
Well, can I tell you something?
I'm not making that up.
We're not paid actors. It really happened.
I'm not making that up. You could tell because I'm telling you right now, there's no way I made that up on the spot for the purposes of convenience. If that happened, which it didn't, but if that happened, hey, Jamaal, could it be because you are a piece of shit who's going to get what's coming to him? Maybe it has nothing to do with race at all. Maybe it has to do with you being a congressman constantly trying to weaponize the federal government to control other people's lives. Maybe it has to do with you telling everyone else that they have to fix your problems instead of you fixing your problems. Maybe it's because you pull fire alarms as apparent stunts to try to meddle with things politically, or just because you're completely retarded. But again, maybe Jamaal Bowman has problems that he could fix himself, that he should fix himself. It's another episode of like, well, I would try, but like a guy called me a piece of shit on the street. If someone came up to me as I'm not, well, I guess I am rarely recognized in public because I'm not like a high profile celebrity, but occasionally it happens. I guess I would wonder, like, who's more recognizable, Jamaal Bowman or me? I want this contest now. But occasionally, maybe a few times a year, I'll be out in public and someone will talk to me because they listen to the show or they've seen my videos. And that's very cool. Pretty much always it's pleasant and it's nice to meet people who have found value in my material. But if someone recognized me and came up to me and just said, hey, you're a piece of shit, fuck you because you said this or whatever, I would laugh. I mean, I'd have one hand reaching toward a particular area on my body that stores a tool useful for such things. But if a stranger came up to me with that sort of aggression, I don't think I would take it as like, oh, my life, I might as well not try anymore. All of my decisions are irrelevant now. I would laugh in that dude's face and say, who the hell are you? And what is wrong with you? Because it would be funny.
I think that you should not accuse him of making this up. I fully believe it happened, but it happened indirectly. Somebody said something like, sir, I disagree with you, but indirectly.
Oh, okay. So yeah, it was, he found a note on the sidewalk that may have been intended for his discovery, but we can't be sure. And indirectly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes. He's indirectly called a piece of crap.
Whoever you are who found this note, fuck you, you're a piece of shit. Anyway, okay. Lastly, I have an update in the Jonathan Joss killing. And this is the King of the Hill voice actor who played John Redcorn on the show. Robert, as we talked about, was on the stream. I went over this in a couple different streams, but one of those streams was with Robert. And to quickly review, Jonathan Joss lived with a woman who he called, or the woman called herself his husband. So he's married to a woman presenting as a man and took testosterone to grow the goatee. I think you had some commentary on the goatee, as I recall.
I stand by it.
Yeah. The fully justified killing on the basis of the goatee, I think, was maybe not that, something like that. But it's clear they said it was a gay relationship. It's just a woman who had some hormones and they're not gay, but they're calling it gay because the woman presents as a man. Anyway, bizarre couple living outside of San Antonio in Texas. And the claim of hate crime here was that their neighbors were so intolerant of seeing two men love each other that they just couldn't handle it anymore and came over and shot Jonathan Joss dead, even though obviously they're looking at a man and a woman together. It's just the woman happens to be bizarre. And the complicating factor here was that that the behavior of these two, Joss and his quote-unquote husband, was erratic leading up to this. They were drugged out all the time, according to the neighbors. Joss himself was erratic and threatening with the neighbors. He was known to run around naked with a crossbow, threatening people. So it seemed like a matter of time before someone took care of the problem, because apparently police would not. Police were called dozens of times, and he was never arrested or dealt with. But at some point in January, Joss's house burned down, And then there's video, I think you and I went over that video of him inside the house singing a song with lyrics like "Let the motherfucker burn." And so either there was like a drug lab that went awry and caught the house on fire potentially, or maybe they intentionally burned the house down to collect some sort of money or some sort of benefit. But if your house burns down and you're trying to put it out yourself, you're not on the inside of the house singing in what it appears to be a gleeful way about your house being destroyed, not just because you've lost your property, but as you pointed out, because there are rather apparent safety implications of doing so. That roof might collapse on your head at any moment. So whatever happened here, it appears they have some bizarre involvement in the destruction of their own home. The killing happened when Joss and his husband returned to their burned down house on June 1st. They were collecting some money in their mailbox related to the house burning down. It was some sort of government benefit. The air quotes husband explained this, but they got some money in their mailbox related to the house burning down. So they were there to pick it up. The husband says an enraged neighbor came over and killed Jonathan Joss, shot him dead while shouting homophobic slurs. And that's why this was clearly an anti-gay hate crime. And until now, we haven't heard from the neighbor who killed Jonathan Joss or his lawyer. His name is Sigfredo or Freddy Ceja Alvarez. And his lawyer, Nico LaHood, is now talking to media. And he's saying what we suspected, I think any reasonable person would have suspected from the start. He says this is not a murder case, and I don't think Alvarez has been indicted yet. So it's officially still not a murder case, although it's presumed to be going that direction. Anyway, he says it's not any kind of illegal killing. This is a self-defense case. It's not a hate crime. Freddie, the guy accused of murdering Jonathan Joss, defended himself from Joss's aggression, and the evidence will show that.
100% is not hate crime. It's been difficult for him. I mean, he trusts that the truth will prevail.
For the first time, we're hearing from the attorney representing the man accused of killing actor Jonathan Joss.
It's been 24 days since Sigfredo Ceja Alvarez has been accused of the murder of actor Jonathan Joss. On June 1st, Joss was picking up mail and checking on his property near Pleasanton Road when he was allegedly shot and killed by Alvarez. KSAT 12 later found out that an ongoing feud had been occurring between the neighbors, and officers had been called to the property more than 60 times in less than 2 years. A lot of talk about the case since it happened has been about the possibility that it was a hate crime. Joss's husband went on social media to say that a man approached them yelling homophobic slurs. But LaHood says, in his opinion, this isn't a case of a hate crime.
It's a struggle for him personally, is this accusation of a hate crime, and that is completely antithetical to his character, to his family. This has nothing to do with anything about sexual orientation or hate crime. This has to do with a very long time of torment in that neighborhood.
LaHood says right now Alvarez has the support of those neighbors and that evidence will show this is a case of self-defense.
This was leading up, unfortunately. And as you know, people in Texas have a right not to be a victim. You have a right to self-defense. You have a right to defense of third persons legally and under the law. And we believe that applies here.
For now, LaHood says Alvarez, who is yet to be indicted, awaits his day in court.
He's a man of faith. He loves his family. He's secure in the truth and what his intentions were and what he's been dealing with for a long time.
And I believe him. I think it's far more likely that this was some kind of deranged drug addict situation, history of violent aggression, of course, that guy attacked somebody, paid the price for it, and that am I supposed to believe that, or that like a neighbor was suddenly overtaken with a fit of homophobic rage because he saw a guy and a weird chick show up momentarily to pick up a check from their mailbox?
Are you accounting for the fact that it was the first day of Pride Month?
That's right. I forgot about that. It was he waited for months, and right. That's why he waited so long. It was to send a message on the first day of Pride Month. God, how these people say such things with straight faces. I forgot about that point. Some points of caution on the self-defense claim, though. One, we don't have any new evidence that this lawyer is talking about. Now, I assume he's not making it up, but we don't know what he means when he says the evidence will show it was self-defense. It's information that he has in his back pocket, I assume, that we'll see at some point. Number two, though, the killing, as I understand, was on Joss's property, and that could make a self-defense claim harder. You don't, of course, forfeit self-defense rights if you're on someone else's property, but if there may have been some crime committed by the neighbor, Alvarez, initially, even if it was a simple trespass, that could complicate his presence there and whether he's actually legally justified. I don't know. You're the Texas man. You can tell me. As far as I'm aware, like, you can shoot anybody on the spot in Texas and it's just fine. I don't know. But
anytime, anywhere. No, but it will make a big difference if he was in his own home or in somebody else's home.
Yeah.
Because the presumption will change.
Yeah. So it may actually be tough for this guy, but he'll have to answer. I think, why were you on his property? What? For all I know, there's a great explanation for why we're just not aware of. So we'll see where it goes. I think whatever the truth is, it is not homophobic hate crime that this deranged husband, homophobic hate crime saved for June 1st, that this deranged husband person is talking about. Anyway, before I finish up with Super Chat, Robert, I wanted to give you some opportunity to talk about this trip of yours in a little bit more detail, taking a motorcycle from Arkansas to the Arctic Ocean. And as far as I understand, like, the last stretch of this road didn't even exist until 2017 or something.
Yeah, it's very recent. So this is, this is me just having fun. I used to be a hiker and I would go on long hikes, and I've had some pretty dicey ones where I almost died or got severely injured. And so this is the latest iteration of that. This is my midlife crisis, and that's the goal. Arkansas to the Arctic Ocean. I'm going by myself, and I'm just having fun with it. That's the only purpose of the blog, by the way. I'm not a content creator. I don't even have a Twitter account. It's nothing to do with money or fame or anything. So, but if anybody wants to follow it, it's just for fun.
And some other details, obviously you're doing this by motorcycle, not car, so the choices about what to pack have become significant. And the other thing is I joke about you going to the North Pole, but kind of. And the thing about the North Pole effectively at this time of year is you're going to have, not only is finding where to sleep going to be a problem, there's not darkness to sleep. And if you don't even have a car, do you have a tent in this get up? Is that how you plan it? You're going to sleep at campsites?
Yeah, I'm taking a tent, sleeping bag, sleeping pad, the little stove, all those things. The idea is to camp most of the time, not all the time. So I'm chronicling all the clothes that I take. I'm very particular about the fabrics that I use because, they have a huge impact, particularly when you're getting into cold, rainy weather. And one of the challenges, perhaps the main challenge, is going from the south. So I'm going to start in July, 100-degree weather in the south, and then make it all the way up there when, at least at night, the temperatures could be in the 30s, all the way up there. Now, if I'm lucky, maybe they won't make it down to that. But it's also the rainy season up there. From what I understand, I've never been. In the last several hundred miles, perhaps over 1,000 miles, we'll have very little phone reception. So doing this by myself, I don't know. It makes me a little nervous. I'm not going to lie.
How much of this, obviously, once you get into the northern part of British Columbia, even, there's a whole lot of nothing. But especially as you start going from the Yukon Territory, Northwest Territory, like I said, this last stretch of road didn't even exist until 2017. Have you done an accounting of what kind of distance is legitimately nothing? And I mean, like, if you have any kind of emergency, let's say that, I don't know, your motorcycle has a flat tire or something, whatever it might be. What do you do if you need help? I assume you've thought of that. Or is it just start walking Dumb and Dumber style?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. Some things like a flat tire, I should be able to fix myself. But if something else happens to the bike, the last several hundred miles are dirt and it might be muddy. And, if you ride motorcycles, that's actually pretty sketchy. It's pretty tricky, especially on a heavy bike that is loaded. It's easy to fall. And then something could break on the bike. And at that point, pretty much, I am just hoping for somebody to go by, and like ask for help.
Dang. All right. Well, when you say that you're pretty experienced in the outdoors and stuff, although this isn't something that you and I have talked about very much, I dabble, I like to do a little bit of mountain climbing, some high points. I'm not particularly skilled, But one of my goals is to make it to the top of Granite Peak, which is the highest point in Montana. And it's actually fairly difficult, technically. It's one of the most difficult state high points to reach. And I haven't attempted it since 2020. My dad's done it many times, but I did it with my dad, or I attempted with my dad. And we made it like 99% of the way up before we couldn't figure out the last part of the path. And then some weather moved in. And so it was a heartbreaking decision for me to know that we're going to have to turn around like a few hundred feet short of this summit, maybe not even that. And this is probably the last attempt I'm going to get it with my dad, because my dad's getting older and I don't think he even really wants to try it anymore, because it's physically brutal. It's very challenging. And so it was a heartbreaking moment for me. I legitimately cried. Make fun of me all you want, but I don't cry very often. I cried because it was like in my head, I had to achieve this with my dad, and I couldn't do it. We didn't do it. And I don't know if I'd ever get a chance to do that again. And I hope I get up there someday. Maybe with my sons, I'll get up there. But the question I'm getting at in the personal context is there was a very difficult decision that had to be made that conditions considered, you cannot continue. In the interest of safety and being a responsible person, you must turn around, even if you're basically there. Now, maybe some out there who are more hardcore than me would say, no, man, you should have pushed on. You should have finished it off. Even though you get caught up there in weather, you're screwed. You're stuck up there at night, you're screwed. You're going to die, and people die on that mountain. Where do you land in the risk taker versus caution assessment if you find yourself in a difficult situation? How willing to push it are you?
Man, now that I'm older, I think that I would turn back. When I was younger, I did some very stupid things to the point that I thought I had died out. There's a longer story I got to tell you sometime, but I did a hike in Colorado in the wintertime. I spent the night out on a mountain with very cold temperatures. We're talking probably 10 or 20 below.
So you have the experience I was trying to avoid. Yeah, you almost froze to death.
Yes, in a tent, in a sleeping bag and all that. And my shoes, and again, there's a longer story. It's the end of the show. I don't want to bore anybody. But my shoes, which I had inside the tent, I guess they got wet the day before on the inside. And when I woke up in the morning after a horrific night, they were frozen solid. They were like, I literally could not even pry open my shoes. They were blocks of ice. And I still had to wear them to them, put my snowshoes on because it was like 6 feet of fresh snow. I thought I was going to lose my toes. It was a big deal. And even then, I kept going up the mountain like an idiot. And from time to time, I would sink in the snow up to my neck. And with my walking sticks, I would try to find something so that I could get out from the snow and keep going. And I lost one of my water bottles. And I mean, it was like a whole tragedy. And there came a point when I was going up the mountain when I sink in the snow one more time, and it would happen unexpectedly. And I'm up to my neck, and I tried to find a way out, and I can't. And like, I just stood there for 15 minutes, like knowing I died. Like I died. This is
in a snowbank. Yeah.
Yeah. This is it. And then like shame set in. Literally, it was just shame. It was like, you have to try. Like you can't be so lame that you just like stand here and die. And I like tried again. I was able to get out. And finally, when I made it up, they had to take me to an ambulance.
Were you rescued, or did you get out on your own?
I got out on my own, but as soon as I was going up the ski mountain on the backside, and the ski patrol then went up to get me at the very top, and they took me down to an ambulance.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And I have stories like that are very dumb. Now
is
that I'm
this
older,
going to become one of those? Is my question.
You know, I kind of hope so. I need something. I need some
excitement. Well, you mentioned dropping a water bottle, and that may seem trivial. It's not. There have been a few times where I've been out in a wilderness setting where I underestimated water needs. And that is, especially when you have to exert a lot of physical energy. Now, I don't know where motorcycle riding fits in that, because I don't do it. But if you're in a situation where you need to work physically and you are short on water, you don't have water purification, you don't have drinkable water on you, that's trouble very quickly. So I assume you're bringing like water purification system, or what's your water plan?
Yeah, I have a couple of bottles that I can just fill up with water, because along the road, you know, I should always have water, but I am taking water purification just in case, you know, if something were to happen, if I'm stuck somewhere and I have to spend the night or multiple nights, I don't know. Now, again, all those things are unlikely. I'll be on a motorcycle, on a road. It should go well as long as I don't fall, particularly on the dirt road. That is the thing that makes me nervous.
And maybe I'm just worried about this because I have no information and I'm just overselling the danger. But the other side is the road was built for a reason, I assume. This connects to some kind of like Eskimo community or something on the other side of this. Is that actually, are there truckers bringing supply? Like, is this community at the end, are they supplied by sea or are they supplied by this road? And if they're supplied by this road, of course, there's safety and traffic moving up and down that.
I don't know. I know that there's not very much traffic. I have intentionally not looked up anything about this area. I don't want to.
Okay, so
we'll figure it out.
There's my answer as to where you land on the risk versus caution calculation. All right. Anyway, all right. Do you have any other thoughts on it before we finish up?
No, thank you for sharing it. This is something, again, just for fun. The last several years of my life, like professionally, they've been very challenging, and so I need this. And I just want to have a.
What's the you've done the total distance calculation, right? Well, how much ground are you covering?
According to that route, it's about 4,200 miles each way, I think. But I'm going to end up taking a slightly different route that will be a little longer. So I think it may end up being almost 4,500 miles each way.
Wow. Okay. If you want to get updates on it, motorcyclerobert.com. And of course, I'll hear your story, I hope, when you're back. Anyway, it's time for chat, and then we'll get out of here. So let's see what our chatters have to say. Over on YouTube, let me give a quick refresh there. Let's see. Rod Bischoff over on Tippy Stream. Thank you, Matt, and Bald co-host. I'm going to listen to this Monday morning so I don't crash my road trip. Well, thank you. Appreciate it. That was one thing I forgot to highlight was the old. If you don't like this version of Robert, you got to check out the young version of Robert. Look at that, man. We had the same hairstyle in high school. Is this around the time of Nearly Froze to Death, Robert? Even that hair couldn't provide you with enough warmth?
Oh, no. This was when I was so young. I was like 17 and I was a little turd. I was a skateboarder that listened to punk rock and just thought that, he knew everything.
And then he literally came to Jesus. And he brought me to Jesus. So pretty drastic turnaround. If only you could talk to that man with the mane now, how he would marvel at how times
he would think I'm an idiot. That's the thing. He would think I'm an idiot.
All right. Long Dong John. Thank you, Rod. Speaking of missing co-hosts, whatever happened to Dell? Do we need to send someone over to the double wide for a life check, including looking at Maud's ass? No, Dell and I are on very good terms. And Dell is still going to be a contributor to the show. To be completely candid, I think Dell works best in kind of his like support character role. And so we talked about that, and I definitely want to bring him back in certain instances for that purpose. Like I loved I loved Dell as Santa Claus for Christmas. And I'm not saying that's all he can do. It's just I think that's where he fits best. So Dell is still around. Dell, I hope, will still contribute to the show. And I hope we can hear some stories from the double wide sometime soon. Dell, beyond just his characters and kind of his like funny bits, Dell is just a really, really good man. And I say that in recognition of everything that he's offered to me personally, but things that he suffered in his personal life too. And if people remember his call on the call-in show back in like 2019, his story of losing his wife and everything that his family has endured and what he's been able to do despite it. He's just a really good dude. Like I don't know, a fatherly figure. I don't consider myself short on a fatherly figure because I think I have a great dad. But if I needed one, Dell would be a great candidate. You know what I mean? He's that kind of guy. So, Joshy boy, Robert is absolutely right. I've been told by other blacks that he's allowed to say it that way. I've been told by other blacks that I will never succeed because of the color of my skin. Then they revoked my black card, so I don't have to worry about that anymore. Yeah, well, I guess. When the black card is revoked, do you then succeed? Do you get like a few success points, a little bit of advancement just by default? I don't know.
Yeah, you level up like 10 times and then you're set for life.
Purpose of the ages, when justice abandons reason, We need a higher standard. Christian nationalism sets one. God is real. God is good. Evil is bad. Are you for God or against him? Simple enough, even for a Supreme Court judge to grasp. You know, that's the way that I came to God and I came to the decision to follow Christ is a little bit different than that. But I think that premise is whatever leads you to choose that path, I think is as valid as any other. I think the point is the path and the decision rather than the minutia of why. But that simple premise, I think, is maybe a defining feature between those who choose to follow Christ or even those who believe in the concept of God in general versus those who don't. Like, is evil real? And as you know, Robert, like the demon people are real, and I believe that they revealed themselves to me. And I know that sounds silly to some people who don't believe in such things. Maybe you don't like the term demon, but the question is, evil, is that a thing? Forces that are totally contrary to everything that is good, like the ideal standard of what good means. Are there forces contrary to that, even if you don't like the demon characterization? Yes, evil's real. And if you believe that evil is real, well, I just think that has a lot of overlap with people who choose to believe in God, but to me it's more like accept the truth. That there is such a force in this world. There is such an architect of the moral framework of the world. All the things that you and I have talked about for years. So I know I'm just kind of telling you stuff we've talked about already. But what do you think about that distinction? Is evil real or not? And I don't know a lot of people who are like devoted atheists who say evil's definitely real, though. Maybe I'm wrong. Of course,
I think that evil is very much real. I don't know how somebody could deny that. And I do believe that evil runs deeper than simply what we can see and touch. I mean, I do believe that the best way to account for the depths of evil that exist is to account for spiritual forces. I think it provides a more likely explanation of events than the alternative. That is to say, people are just like weird and sometimes they do things that are horrific.
And maybe I should clarify a little bit. Maybe they wouldn't say evil is not real. What they would say is it's relative. Like evil is a human judgment of the quality of something that varies by culture or individual, and there is no objective definition of what evil is. I think that would be a better way to phrase it than is like evil isn't real. I don't want to misrepresent their position. But anyway, thank you.
But no one can live by that. Like, if that is what you assert, like, I don't think anyone can actually believe by the idea that everything is just a matter of opinion.
Oh, I've heard the argument many a time. Yeah.
No. I know they make the argument, but the minute you steal their wallet, it's not a matter of opinion. It can be lived out.
Yes. There are instinctive reactions to injustice. Someone else was on the stream, I think it was Matt Palumbo, we were talking about like the inherent value of life, and whether you accept that or not, when someone points a gun at your face, you seem to have a reaction that implies the inherent value of life, was his point. You don't go, well, I'd prefer if you didn't pull the trigger, but if you did, like, I'm here coincidentally for no reason at all. So what would really be the loss?
That's right. Nothing lost. Yep.
Yeah. You have an instinctive reaction that seems to imply that there's some moral truth to that. And, we'd be wise to question why and to try to understand that force. So that's how you end up on the path. Or you listen to Robert's hours and hours of Bible study material on my website that you can go Gospel of John, all of Acts. You want some lessons on these topics, Bible study page right there on the homepage. You can listen to Robert talk about this for hours and hours and hours in a very, I don't know how many pages of scriptural interpretation you have read, but it's even more than the Supreme Court decision pages, I think.
It's all just minutia or whatever that doesn't matter at all,
Purpose of the Ages says, for the record, I'm not pro-Christian nationalism. That would make us bad just like Israel. But if we have idiotic judges, what protections do we have against those powerful fools other than making the rules incredibly simple? Well, I think that you have to have a firm understanding of the role of judge. And for those who either through ignorance mistakenly exceed the role, go beyond its boundaries, or those who love expanding their own power and do so intentionally, you have to have a remedy. Now, the remedy, I think, constitutionally is impeachment. The problem with this is the same problem with impeachment of a president. These things are less objective and more political. And so the reality is no judge is going to be impeached by a Congress who likes the outcome of what the judge is doing. If there is a flaw in the constitutional system, and I'm not saying there aren't, so you could think of many potentially, I think the big flaw is, and actually, it's not like this was unforeseen. There's plenty in the Federalist Papers warning about the dangers of parties, factions, these interest groups. But fundamentally, the political parties, I think, care about their own power more than they care about the institutional organization. By that, I mean Congress doesn't care about maintaining its own power for its own sake. It depends on who's in control of Congress and who in the other branches of government is exercising their power in what way. So if judges are doing things that Congress likes, even if it's beyond their constitutional scope, who gives a damn? They're not going to be impeached. And thus, here we are. And then you got John Roberts out there saying stuff like, well, mere disagreement with a decision is not grounds for impeachment. Yes, it is. You don't have to be you don't have to be caught on a weird Vegas bender banging a hooker and doing a bunch of blow Hunter Biden style to get impeached. You can be impeached. In fact, you might even argue that professional conduct is a more important thing to impeach on than like private life matters of immorality or even crime. You're there to do a job. And if you do the job poorly, you should be fired.
Yes, and I think when somebody expresses something so contrary to our system of government, like Justice Jackson just did, those are the best grounds for impeachment. To say you literally wrote out this idea that would undo our nation, and you're saying this is what should happen. No, sorry, you need to get out of the court. Those would be the best grounds.
It'd be nice if we had a Congress serious about such things, but. Long and distinguished.
That's a big game, man.
When I was 12, I got lost in the snow in Northern California with my little brother and my mom for about a day and a night. Was treated for frostbite, but ended up okay. Man, I have not been in thankfully, the situations that I've been in that potentially could get dicey, I've removed myself before they actually did. I've been in a couple that I've gotten out of before they got as crazy as the things you're talking about. If you're in the mindset where you're like, I'm going to freeze to death, what a terrifying mindset that must be in.
Yeah, my experience was the worst experience of my life, like, hands down. It was horrific. But for them to be lost a day and a half, and it would be so much more terrible with family. I can say that I had no qualms about dying because it was just me. Like, it was fine. I'm okay with dying.
So you did get the gun pointed at your head and you thought, there are no implications to this at all.
Yeah, I'm like, this is fine.
You were the dog in the burning house, just like the meme.
But this is part of the reason I don't do dangerous things with other people. I would feel so responsible. I would feel so, in that moment, all I could think about was I did this to someone else. But if it's just me, it's like, okay.
I need someone to climb Granite Peak with me. You're saying you're out?
I know. I mean, if you plan it and you're like, hey, let's do this, sure.
If you were ever serious about it, I'd be open to it. We got to do like, you need to, there's rappel work. There's all kinds of stuff. It's involved.
I mean, I'd have to learn, of course, and train and all that. But just know that if the moment that we're dying, I'll be like, yo, this is on you. Like, I'm not responsible.
The thing about Granite Peak is one of the tougher parts is crossing a snow bridge. It's kind of a point in the mountain. It's couloirs on both sides. About like 45-degree pitch, like super steep. And it's probably a 50-yard snow bridge, depending on when you get there. Even you get it in July, if it's a high snow year, it's covered in snow. Sometimes it might be bare rock. But people do it without roping up and securing each other. If you started sliding down that, you talk about like horrific snow deaths. You are going down a slide for hundreds of thousands of feet. And unless you're really good with an axe, you're not stopping yourself and you're just slamming into some rocks. You talk about like what your brain is thinking. People have fall deaths on granite frequently. In fact, there can sometimes be multiple per year. But if you have time to be sliding down this mountain face, unable to stop yourself, realizing like, and you're tumbling like, I wonder how much time I have left before I slam into the bang. And then you're splattered. Yeah, that's the thing is like if I ever die in some sort of outdoor survival setting or adventure setting, please make it quick. I don't want to have time to think about my fate. And it's for a lot of the reasons that you talk about, not just the pain, but one of the reasons I haven't been back up there is there's a high level of fear of it for me. It's the most scared I've ever been in my life because heights and exposure scare me. But I fear, of course, creating a widow, leaving my sons fatherless. Why? Because like I had to get to the top of this super cool mountain. There's something about like male aspiration that just wants to conquer difficult challenges. In the past, you had to do that to provide for your family. In this case, it's just me like wanting to live out some kind of macho fantasy or something. Lots of people do it, okay? It's not that insane. This isn't Everest or something. But it's harder in it's like if I did have that slip and I had that realization sliding down the snow face that I'm going to slam into the rocks and my sons are going to grow up without a father because I had to get to the top of this stupid mountain.
Yeah, it changes everything. I mean, I don't have to worry about a wife and children. If I did, I would not do the things that I do, without a doubt. Even riding motorcycles. I mean, I normally don't drive a car. I ride motorcycles to work or whatever for daily life. I would not do that if I had a family. That would be wildly irresponsible.
Motorcycles freak me out, but I'm more open to motorcycles than I am to cyclists. You're not a cyclist, I'll give you that. But answer me this, and I need you to be honest. I've known you to be nothing but an honest man. Do you lane split?
I do not. I do not. Yeah.
I knew you were a godly man, and you would not do that. Thank you.
Yep, and I do not support it. I actually, and now motorcyclists are going to come after me. They're going to like leave hateful comments on my blog, but I'm sorry, I don't support it.
No, lane splitters. I'm sorry, you're as bad as the cyclists. Anyway,
they deserve to be hit.
Dangerous Spaces. We'll close it out here. Lunachick sent me that video of the woman confronting Antifa linked in the Discord. Already seeing if I can figure out how to find her. You decide if you want her on our show. In the interest of time, I'm not going to play it tonight, but thank you for that, Tim, and I'll take a look at it. And hope maybe we can make the connection. Thank you, Lunachick. Dangerous Spaces says, whoa, you mean the guy that didn't pay taxes wasn't reliable in paying what he owes people? If you're too dumb not to realize that might happen, I question your intelligence as a lawyer. Well, that's what Robert's getting at too. The story they want you to believe doesn't make sense. So there must be something else to the story.
Yeah, that's what I think.
Also says, I think I understand what Bowman means by indirectly calling people the N-word. I've heard examples of what I think he means. It's a bit hard to explain, so maybe I'll message you later. Well, any criticism is coded language for the N-word. So, I mean, I guess you might as well just drop it Shiloh style, because if anything is the N-word functionally, okay. Lastly, he says, when I first started at Tenet, Tim was helping me out during the Tenet stuff. One of the best pieces of advice you gave me was not to read the comments. People being negative really gets you down, and ignoring it is better for your mental health. Well, that's the thing. I always am careful about how I talk about that, because it implies like I don't care what people think, or I don't appreciate listening to the show, commenting. Of course I do. And even people that have negative things to say about me or Tim or Robert or anybody else, I still appreciate you giving the show a chance. Thanks for coming by my corner of the internet. I appreciate it. But I do believe there is something genuinely unhealthy about reading anonymous negative opinions about you on the internet. And so I have to shield myself from that experience, because it'll drive me up a wall. I will go insane. I will become clinically crazy if I have to live that experience. So I just opt out. Doesn't mean I don't appreciate. I'm just protecting my own mental health. But, all right. I think we're all set. Let me double check over on Odyssey. Blanket says fake peanut butter. Yes, fake peanut butter. Matt, did you see that Kathy Griffin made a video of an Orange Man decapitated head video? Kathy Griffin did it again? She has another Trump decapitated head? I haven't heard that.
I haven't heard about this, but that would be kind of amazing. It would be like 2016, The Revenge.
She needs a career jumpstart. It's all she has. So, all right. Blanket says, Matt, it's because of the N-word why they eat unhealthy food. Well, I guess. That's why I eat unhealthy peanut butters, because people call me racial slurs, and it's my coping mechanism, and that's why I have so many things wrong in my life. All right.
I just want to say, he's like, well, this is why black and brown people, it's like brown people have a completely different set of issues and they don't get called the N-word. They get called other words. So like, can we be more specific about the brown people plights? Like, I don't know.
They get called bipties, and they're very healthy because they eat more curry and rice. They don't indulge in the fried chicken, whatever else. I don't know. All right. Sorry, that was indirectly calling him an N, implying that he likes fried chicken. All right, I think we're all set. Robert, that's like the longest stream I've done in a while. I appreciate you hanging around for a while because that was some dense stuff and, of course, interesting things to talk about. So thank you for giving me so much time tonight.
Thank you. This was a lot of fun.
And obviously, Godspeed on your trip, man. All jokes aside, there are some dangers, and I hope I hear a good story when you get back. And like I said, I admire a good adventure too. So I'm glad that you're getting to live out a little bit of an adventurous thrill, given how much professional obligation you've had in your life lately. But we'll call it there. Appreciate everybody tuning in tonight. Thanks to the live chatters and super chatters for making the live show a success. If you're listening on demand later, thank you kindly as well for supporting the show. You know, a 3.5 hour podcast is probably good for you on your trip, Robert. And this.
Listen back to this.
I've been making some of those lately. Thanks to my friend NeoUnrealist for joining. You can find his links, YouTube, Rumble, X, all atop of the description, at NeoUnrealist. Of course, thanks to Robert for sitting in again to follow the crazy motorcycle trip to the Arctic Ocean all throughout July. MotorcycleRobert.com. Thanks to producer Tim for his continued assistance. As always, if you'd like more to listen to or anything else show-related, MattChristiansenMedia.com is where you find it. Or mattis.gay, if you prefer brevity. I'm back Sunday and Wednesday nights. Have a great night and a great week, and of course, a happy and healthy 4th of July. Remember, I'm off Wednesday, so I'll see you next Sunday. Have a good night.